Prior knowledge on High School DXD is not needed, everything is explained. Naruto is the main character. How do I say this without Susan getting mad? This is for the more mature side of the audience. I read a lot more questionable stuff with changed words. This movie contains the first 8 videos. This fanfic is called Devil Ninja by the Engulfing Silence. In this episode, Naruto gets transported into the High School DXD world through a portal made from their combined attacks during the battle against Kaguya. It destroys his chakra coils, which is later healed when he becomes a devil. Naruto wakes up to Rias under the sheets. Rias tries to learn about Naruto's past and takes a very well described shower for some reason. I didn't like not having this series finished, so here we are exactly 1 year later, and I've recorded things with better mic quality and now have over 15 hours of this series ready to go. There will be daily over hour-long videos uploaded. Let's get into it. Devil Ninja, Chapter 1, Shinobi turned Devil. The light from the sun streamed in through the small window covered by a set of blinds that only did a poor job of actually keeping said rays of blinding luminescence from getting through. One blonde-haired, blue-eyed young man groaned in discontent as his eyes flickered open very briefly. They closed almost immediately after, as they were hit by a beam of light so bright the young man thought he might go blind. Dang, that sun. Couldn't it have picked a better time to rise, or better yet not risen at all? One of these days he was gonna find some way to turn it off or blow it up. He would prefer blowing it up. Grunting slightly, the blonde male slowly sat up in bed, stifling a yawn with one hand as he did. Oh wow, he hated mornings. They always seemed to come at the worst times. They actually did, and he wasn't much of a morning person, that's all. As the blonde began to gain more cognitive thoughts, he stretched himself out, turning this way and that as he raised his hands high into the air and listened to his back pop and crack in a way that would make most people cringe. Slowly but surely, Uzumaki Naruto got out of bed and made his way into the bathroom with a stumbling gait. It was just another day of his new life. After making his way towards the shower and turning on the water, Naruto ran a hand through his spiky locks of blonde hair before turning to look at himself in the mirror. At 17 years of age, Naruto could say he was honestly pleased with what he saw. Back when he was younger, he had always been very short. Even after coming back from his 3-year training trip, he had only grown tall enough to match the height of a few of his friends. In the past few months, he had finally managed to grow to a nice above average height for someone his age. Sure, he was no Jiraiya, but he was taller than his old man had been. That had to count for something. Absently, Naruto raised both his hands and pressed them together to make a strange seal with his fingers. It looked like a cross. He focused for a moment, looking both inward and outward, his eyes staring intently at his stomach, while his mind, body, and soul searched for something he had been dearly hoping to feel against his coming here. After a second or two, he sighed. Still nothing. There was not even a hint of what he had been looking for. Man, talk about depressing. He shook his head and slapped himself on the cheek to get out of his minor funk. It would be best to not dwell on it. There was always tomorrow, right? Right? The shower began to steam, and Naruto stepped in, groaning as the heat caused his aching muscles in his back and shoulder to loosen. He pressed his palms against the wall of the shower, let the hot liquid run down his frame and mat his hair to his head. It felt so good, especially after a hard night of trying to get his ruined body back into shape. That old saying that you never know what you have until you lose it had never rung more true to him than it did now. After this shower, the blonde was finally awake and capable of getting ready for the day. This consisted of him getting dressed in the uniform of his school, a black blazer over a white long-sleeved shirt with black highlights and a black ribbon on the collar and matching black pants. The rest of his outfit was actually much different from the standard academy uniform. An orange sleeve shirt underneath his dress shirt and orange and black sneakers. They were still considered acceptable within the school standards, though the principal had frowned upon seeing his choice in color. Not that he cared. If the man didn't understand the greatness of orange, that was his problem. Once he was dressed and his stomach was full, the blonde locked the door to his apartment and was ready to start his day with a grin. Today was going to be a good day. He could feel it. Today was going to suck. He just knew it. In his haste to finally begin his new lease on life, he had forgotten about one simple fact that made all his possible enjoyment of the day evaporate like a water jutsu when it was struck by an overpowered fire jutsu. He had school today. What's worse was this was a normal high school. He hated school on the best of days, but at least back when he was an 8-year-old brat, they had been teaching him how to be a cool ninja. All that crap they were trying to shove down the throats of the young were just useless. What good was algebra and science going to do anyone that didn't plan on being a nerdy science geek? What good was history when he didn't give two twats about the past? When would the velocity vector v of an object that has a position x to the power of t at a time t and x at time can be computed as the derivative of a position ever be useful? Never. That's when. Naruto wasn't some nerdy science geek or some stupid smart physics professor in the making. He was a ninja. Combat was his profession and kicking butt was his calling card. He didn't need to learn math, history, and physics. Let the people who were going into the profession that needed to use that crap learn it. He was just fine sticking to his fists. Granted, he didn't know how a ninja would live in this world, but he was sure he could figure something out if given time. Until that time came, however, he was stuck going to school. Talk about sucking at big time. Let's not talk about that. Oh well, at least it was a decent school. The school he was going to was called Koh Academy. Naruto heard tell that at one point it was an all-girls school, but had changed to co-ed some time before he had arrived. The academy was actually a very beautiful campus. Naruto could admit that much at least. It was a large, as in really large, gigantic. It consisted of several buildings, with the main one being a long rectangular building that was 4 stories tall with a slanted roof, reddish brown tiles, and built like some kind of traditional European mansion. At least he thought it was a European mansion. His knowledge on the history of this world and its architecture was incredibly sketchy, meaning nearly non-existent. Still, it was a very nice looking building, and he supposed that's what mattered. All that being said, he still didn't want to be here. Just why he let a strange man talk him into coming here was so far behind him at the moment, it wasn't even worth thinking about it. Ignoring the many people who were staring at him and pointing at him, being a troublemaker in his youth and someone who was used to being hated and glared at, it was pretty easy for him to ignore them. It probably helped that a good deal of them had been doing this since he got here. Just what was their problem anyways? The new blonde student made his way towards his first class of the day. Naruto had never been so glad to hear a bell ring. No, scratch that. He had been just as glad to hear the bell ring yesterday that he did today, and the day before that, and the day before that. Okay, so maybe he had been like this since he started school. He didn't think anyone would blame him for loving the sound of that bell. As far as he was concerned, it was a sound that represented freedom, even if the freedom was only until lunch period ended. Still, it was a freedom that he would cherish until the next class, however short that freedom may be. And it allowed him to explore the school. Even though he had been here for a while, Naruto still had trouble finding his way around, so he always used the opportunity lunch represented to learn the lay to the land, so to speak. Walking around with a piping hot bowl of ramen in one hand and a set of chopsticks in the other, Naruto happily slurped away his noodle dish as he enjoyed the sights and sounds of the school. At least he would have enjoyed the sights and sounds were it not for the fact that another sound caught his attention. It was a very familiar sound, one he had heard so many times before when he had been training with Arisen, that he could tell that it was as easily as he could tell the color of his own hair. It was the sound of a perverted giggle. Issei was a 17-year-old high school student of average height with a short brown hair and light brown eyes. He wore the same standard academy uniform as everyone else who went to Koh Academy, though he also wore a red undershirt and blue sneakers. There was not much else that could be ascribed to him. He was in all regards a below average student, not worthy of noticing except for one fact, he almost unnatural amount of lust. Issei was one of the largest, most perverse beings in existence, the kind of pervert that sent women running for the hills or into a violent fit of feminine fury. He along with his 2 other friends, Mitsuda and Motohama, were known as the perverts. Were known as the perverted trio. On a side note, Jiraiya would be proud of these 3. This perversion Issei possessed would also explain his current activity, an activity he and his 2 friends were partaking in with great relish, watching the kendo club as they got changed. Just looking at that All that lovely female flesh, the soft, milky skin, and the incredible range of asset sizes was enough to make him and the other two perverts nearly, let's go with blow. You look like you're having a good time. Issei grinned widened as he nodded along with the voice. Yeah, his friends nodded as well, neither realizing that the voice did not belong to any of them, busy as they were watching. It's a nice view, isn't it? Issei's drooling showed just how much he agreed with those words. There may also be some nose bleeding in there, but it was hard to tell since his face was pretty much stuck to the wall. Yeah, I'm glad you three are enjoying this so much. It's good to enjoy something while it lasts. Issei blinked. Nah, that was a strange thing to say. Perverts, peepers, leeches, how dare you peek into the changing room? A voice shrieked from behind them. The perverted Chihiro's eyes all widened as their danger sense kicked in like a 512 turbocharged engine into overdrive. Overdrive is a fuel saving mode. So that's it's a factually incorrect statement. Anyways, that was some serious horsepower there. They tried to turn around so they could run away from the scene of the crime. They might have been able to, except that at the moment a set of strong steel wires rose up from the ground and wrapped around the trio, pulling them together and making them trip and fall to the ground. What happened? One of Issei's friends, Mitsudo, shouted in surprise. Where did this wire come from? I don't know. Issei would have liked an answer to that as well. Too bad he wouldn't get one. So you're the three who thought they could watch us. Fear coursed through his veins at the sound of the voice. He didn't want to look, but was unable to stop himself from craning his neck to look up into the eyes of the kendo club captain, who was unfortunately dressed in the academy uniform once more. Even more unfortunate, she had her stick with her and was lightly tapping the bladed side against the palm of her free hand in a manner that sent shivers of terror down Issei's spine. Why am I not surprised it's you three? I should have thought you'd learn your lesson the last time this happened, but it seems you two need to be taught using more forceful methods. More forceful? Motohama shrieked like a girl. Not that Issei couldn't understand why, just thinking about what happened last time sent shivers down his spine. It's not the only thing that... no, I'm not gonna do it. The last time you used your stick to hit us was in the family jewels. The kendo club captain grinned a devilish grin. I know. Girls... let's do that again. In most cases, this would have caused a good deal of men to lose themselves to flinch. Such was the case here. The perverted trio whimpered in fear as the girls closed in on them. As screams of pain emitted from the perverted trio, Naruto found himself laughing joyously as he watched the scene from the school rooftops. He had nothing against the perverted trio, or even perverts in general. Indeed, if he were to hate someone for being perverted, then that meant he would have hated Jiraiya, and that man had been like a father to him, or that really perverted uncle that you loved to death but would never introduce to your friends. He was still undecided. So yes, Naruto did not hate perverts, not at all. He just couldn't help but prank those three when they presented such a perfect opportunity. It was in his nature to prank people who left themselves so open. It would have been a crime against pranking gods not to take such a golden opportunity when presented. Besides, they would be fine. Perverts were an incredibly resilient bunch. They could take the most brutal of beatings by a horde of angry females and get up seconds later like it never happened. He only had to look at Jiraiya as an example. During their 3-year training trip, Naruto had lost count of the number of times his perverted sensei had been beaten to near death, only to recover a second later as if nothing had ever happened. From what Naruto understood, the only time that man had nearly died was when he got caught watching Tsunade. Not the face! Yes, these three would recover soon enough. None of those girls were anywhere near Tsunade's strength. They would be back on their feet before he knew it. Yes, the face. Maybe. As the blonde's snickers turned into light chuckles, he felt as if someone was watching him. Being a ninja, former ninja I suppose, Naruto still restrained a good deal of spatial awareness. He could tell when people were looking at him, and right now he could feel someone's eyes on him. Turning towards the source of his feelings, he realized that someone was indeed watching him. Two someones, in fact. Both of them were females wearing the standard Koh Academy uniform, a white long-sleeve button-down shirt with a black ribbon on the collar, a black shoulder cape and matching button-down corset, and a magenta skirt with white accents. They were also, he noted immediately, incredibly beautiful. One of them was a gorgeous, buxom young woman with long raven-colored hair, violet eyes, pale skin, and assets that looked almost as large as Tsunade's. Her hair was tied into a long ponytail reaching all the way down to her legs, with two antennas sticking out from the top and sloping backwards while an orange ribbon kept it in place. As noted before, she was absolutely gorgeous. Naruto believed the term people used for someone like her was Yamato Nadeshiko, which, if he was remembering this correctly, was the term used to describe the ideal Japanese woman. However, while this girl was indeed beautiful, it was the other one who got his attention. She was a young girl who appeared to be in her late teens, the same age as him and the other girl, and had a figure that was just as generous as the other girls. Her creamy skin looked like it was softer than silk, and her blue-green eyes were breathtakingly enchanting. Between her thin waist, wide hips, small, shapely back, large assets, silky-looking skin, enchanting eyes, and a face that looked like he had been crafted by a pantheon of angels on a quest to find perfection. The girl was easily one of the most beautiful females Naruto... Why did I say his name like that? Naruto had ever seen. It was one of these features that truly made her stand out to him, however. That honor belonged to her hair. Gorgeous long tresses of crimson red hair that spilled over her head and reached all the way down to her thighs with a single strand sticking out from the top. It was a much darker shade of red than his mother, the color and darkness almost reminding him of blood. But still, Naruto could not help but think the girl had some of the most beautiful hair he had ever seen. You could almost say it was love at first sight. Naruto wondered if it was his dad. This was what his dad felt when he saw his mom for the first time. As the pair stood there on the ground looking up at him from where they had stopped, walking to wherever it was they had been heading to. The blonde cast a duo of beautiful females a bright grin and waved merrily at them. The Nadeshiko girl looked amused and waved back. Meanwhile, the crimson-haired female tilted her head, looking a tad curious for several moments before a soft smile played from her lips and she waved as well. Deciding to put on a bit of a show, the blonde allowed himself to fall off the roof before he could get far. His hands hooked themselves onto the water drain with the gravity pushing him down, yet his hands keeping him up. Naruto's feet curved a parabolic arc that led him straight through the open window that he had previously used to get onto the roof into the first place. He let go of the drain, flipping through the air like a ball as he tucked his knees into his chest. After completing his flips, he stretched back out and his feet hit the ground. Had he been an Olympic gymnast using the high bars, he would have just earned himself a perfect 10. Grinning, the blonde began walking down the hall. The grin left him as soon as the bell rang. Heaving a sigh as his freedom was cut short once more, Naruto began making his way back to class with a slow, depressed gait. Akeno, Rias Gremory, the crimson-haired girl said as she watched a strange spiky-headed blonde disappear through the window in an impressive acrobatic display. For a human. Do you know who that was? That's the new student, Uzumaki Naruto, Akeno answered dutifully. He's in class 2B, the same class as Kiba. Not much is known about him. It's only been about a month since he started coming to school here, though a good deal of people seem to think he's some kind of delinquent because of his hair and skin color. That's racist. Her lips curved into a teasing smile. Why do you ask? Has Rias became interested in Koh Academy's newest student? Rias does not say anything to deny or confirm Akeno's taunt. She merely looked up at the still open window Naruto had flown through, its curtain fluttering into the breeze. Uzumaki Naruto. Issei could not believe his phenomenal change in luck. The day had seemed so bleak after he had been beaten to a near-death-like state by the girls in the kendo club. At the time, he could not help but feel like the world was out to get him just because he openly claimed to like assists more than he should and had no issue freely ogling girls as they got, anyways. Why was it that every female ragged on him just because he showed a bit? Okay, a lot more perverseness than most guys. It was a well-known fact that all men were perverted. Why wouldn't these girls see that he was just doing what every other boy wanted to do, but didn't have the guts to actually go through with it? It was while he had been wallowing in his depression, wondering if he would ever get to see a pair of real live asses that she came along. Yuma, a beautiful girl with long black hair that fell down to her waist and kind violet eyes. She wore a short black dress that allowed a tantalizing glimpse of her amazing legs and a light purple jacket on top. She had come to him while he was moping on the bridge and had actually asked him out. Issei still could not believe he was dating this beautiful girl, or that she had been the one to ask him out. It was like God had finally taken pity on him and graced him with this sweet, innocent, and beautiful girl. If only he knew that this girl's presence was not the design of God, then he would be singing a very different tune. The two of them had just finished their first date, which consequently was also the first date Issei had ever been on. It had been incredible. They had done all the things Issei imagined a couple would do on their first date, going to a clothing store where he had bought Yuma a cute scrunchy bracelet. Then they had gone out to an ice cream parlor where he had gotten a soft drink and his girlfriend had ordered an ice cream sundae. Throughout the entire date, Issei had not been able to stop thinking about how lucky he was. Even his normally perverted thoughts had only cropped up on occasion, like when Yuma had leaned over and allowed him to see down her, okay, that had been hot. He had not even thought about how she would be an excellent first addition to his harem. He had not even thought about his harem at all. Issei could honestly say he was beginning to fall in love with this girl. Issei. After their date, the two had made their way to a park. The sun was now going down and the vast array of colors cast halos around Yuma, making her even more beautiful than before. Several droplets of water from the fountain next to them sprinkled into the air around her, adding what almost looked like sparkles to her already dazzling presence. She looked like one of those beautiful girls you'd expect to see in a Jiraiya kind of magazine. Yes, Yuma? Issei asked, his heart skipping a beat as she smiled at him. Aw, such a beautiful smile. There's something I was hoping you would do for me to commemorate our first date. Yuma looked so cute as she blushed demurely and pressed a finger to her lip. Will you grant me a wish? Issei felt like he had just died and gone off heaven. His heart was beating 1,000 miles a second. The painfully fast thump of his blood-pumping organ was almost overpowering to his ears. Was this it? The moment of truth. Would he finally receive his first kiss? What is it? Could you please die for me? Huh? Issei scratched his cheek, his confusion more than evident. Maybe he hadn't heard her right. Could you repeat that? I don't think I heard you right. Yuma's smile became increasingly sinister as she tilted her head down. Shadows seemed to cast harsh angels upon her once angelic face. Her eyes became hidden behind a veil of darkness. Only the sinister glow of her irises remained to be seen. Could you please die for me? Without warning, wings burst from Yuma's back, tearing the fabrics of her dress and jacket, leaving 2 gaping holes in the back. The wings were very large, spanning nearly a meter in each length. They looked like angel wings, except the feathers were black instead of white. With a flap of her wings, Yuma shot into the air and hung several feet above the flabbergasted Issei. I had a lot of fun with you these past couple of days, Yuma said as she held out her hand. Light seemed to gather and coalesce, I don't know, with it, creating what looked like a long spear. Dating a child like you was a nice break for me, and I always treasured this gift you gave me. She held out the small crunchie she bought her. This is why I'm going to make this as painless as possible. She threw the spear at him. Issei, still in shock and trying to understand what was going on, could do nothing more than watch as the spear of light traveled towards him like a bullet. Abstractly, he knew that if that thing hit him, he would be, not on this earth. Yet for some reason, he could not find it in himself to move. Maybe he was just in shock that the girl was falling in love, that he was falling in love with, was trying to toaster bath him. Then again, maybe his mind just had yet to catch up with everything that happened thus far. Fortunately for him, while he was not able to react in time, there was someone else in the area who saw what was happening. This someone was also the kind of person who could never look away when someone else needed help. Issei found himself shoved to the ground just before the spear light could reach him. Instead of shooting through his flesh, it ended up embedded in a pavement several feet away, where it soon dissipated. Yuma looked both shocked and angry. Who the heck are you? Issei blinked at her words, then looked towards the person who saved them. It was a boy with spiky blonde hair, blue eyes, and strange looking birthmarks on his cheeks that looked a lot like whiskers. He was wearing a pair of black pants, a dark orange shirt, and orange sneakers. Issei could have sworn he had seen this boy somewhere before, but was having trouble remembering where. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. The blonde boy introduced himself with a grin. I'm sorry to say this, but even though this dude's a complete pervert, I can't let you kill him. Naruto wondered if it was karma that led him to where he was now, standing in front of some girl with black angel wings as he floated above him and the perverted kid he had just saved from getting skewered with some weird spear made of what looked like light. Seriously, there was just no other explanation for why this would be happening to him. Hadn't he left a world of powerful jutsu and epic battles behind? Apparently not. Oh well, life was getting boring anyways. You can't let me toaster bath them? The girl's eyes narrowed in anger. I don't think you understand what's going on here, so I'm gonna give you a chance to leave and pretend you never saw any of this. Now step aside. Sorry, Naruto scratched the back of his neck while offering a sheepish grin. While I don't know what's going on, it's clear to me that you're going to forcefully toaster bath the guy. He shrugged helplessly. I simply can't stand by and watch someone getting toaster bathed right in front of my eyes when I have the power to stop it. You want the pervert? You're gonna have to go through me. Even if he no longer had the ability to use chakra, it didn't change who he was. Naruto had never been the type of person who could stand idly by while someone else was getting hurt and he could do something about it. Some people would call him reckless, but Naruto liked to think of his actions as noble. So you wanna be a hero, huh? The strange evil angel girl said, grinning. Fine then. You can see what happens to people who try to play hero. Another light spear appeared in her hands. She tossed it, this time at Naruto. Too bad for her, Naruto was not Issei, who would not stand there looking stupid while letting her shoot a light spear through his stomach. Tucking into a forward roll, Naruto let the spear of light hit the ground he had been standing on. As he came up, the blonde reached into his back pocket where he kept the kunai on him at all times. It was a habit that let him remember his roots. Knowing that he couldn't just toss the kunai at the girl because he would be done if he lost his only weapon, Naruto pulled out a spool of ninja wire, which he tried to the loop located at which he tied to the loop that was located at the hilt of the kunai. As he came up from his roll, the blonde deftly tossed a projectile at the girl with black wings. His aim was spot on, not that it would do much good. Without chakra to enhance his muscles, he could not throw the kunai fast enough to make a difference. The girl dodged it rather easily. I don't know what you were hoping to accomplish with that, she taunted as the kunai flew past her. Something like that would never hit me. Naruto grinned. Who says I was trying to hit you? With his hands gripping the wire, Naruto yanked, pulling the kunai back down. Moving his kunai hands in a set of complicated maneuvers, the blonde managed to force the wire to wrap around the girl's leg. Using the kunai as a weight, much like those grappling devices he would find from those superhero characters he had read about in the mangas of this world, like Kamen Rider. What the? Down you go. His arm muscles bulging, Naruto used all the strength he had to yank the girl down. It wasn't as much as he would have liked. Despite how much Naruto trained, his body was only human, and without chakra he could only do so much. Even Rock Lee who couldn't use ninjutsu or genjutsu to save his life, at least had the ability to use chakra. His ability to open the 8 inner gates proved that. Chakra was the lifeblood of a shinobi, and without it, a shinobi would be as weak as a civilian. Still, strength of a civilian or not, Naruto was still a bit stronger than the average human, thus he had enough strength to bring this angel girl back down to his level. Yuma's eyes widened as she was sent spiraling towards the ground. Before she could even think of flapping her wings, her body smashed the pavement of the park hard enough to leave a dent. Groaning, the girl stood up on her wobbly legs, sounds like she had a good time, and looked up as the sound of feet hitting pavement reached her ears. She was just in time to see Naruto's fist meet her face. Isn't Naruto a feminist? The sound of crashing thunder rang through the clearing as flesh smacked against flesh. Fucking I'm not making that joke. Yuma was sent tumbling back from the surprisingly hard hit. It felt like her face had been smashed in by a freight train. Who knew humans could pack such a punch? Okay. Naruto grinned as the girl hit the ground and landed on her back hard, looking absolutely stunned as a large bruise appeared on her cheek. It was good to know he still had it. What are you? Oh my god. The girl sat up and looked at Naruto with a glare, which just caused his grin to widen. There's plenty more where that came from if you don't leave the pervert alone, said perverted. Said pervert's eye twitched as Naruto cracked his knuckles. Really, what was it with people call him that? He had a name too. Yuma snorted. I'll admit, you're a lot stronger than most humans. She stood up and dusted off her dress, looking almost like nothing had happened save for the large bruise on her face. That punch actually hurt. However, this is over. She gave the now confused blonde a devious smile. You're already toaster bathed. What do you mean? Asked Naruto. Yuma didn't say anything, just smiled widely. Not that she needed to say anything, because at the moment, Naruto felt it. Or rather, Naruto didn't feel it. In fact, he didn't feel much of anything from the waist down. That's where the Uzumaki swirl gets you. It was like he had just suddenly gone numb. Didn't he also have a good time? Looking down, Naruto found him still staring at the spear of light that was located in the center of his chest with shock. When had she been able to stab him? He was sure he would have noticed her doing something like this. As blood began welling up in his mouth and dribbling down the side, he looked back up at the girl with black angel wings. When you punched me, Yuma grinned. You were so focused on hitting me, you didn't even notice when I stabbed that light spear into you. I'll admit, I'm actually impressed you lasted this long. Damn. Not many people get to hear that. With that in your chest, it didn't take much for Naruto to realize what had happened. Shinobi usually had great spatial awareness, meaning they could sense things happening around them to a certain degree, and were even able to tell where certain objects were in relation to themselves when not looking at them. While the ability was great, it also had many limitations. The biggest one was hyper-focusing. When a ninja focused so much on completing their objective, their focus tended to zone out everything around them save for the objective itself. Many ninja had lost their lives this way, even those who were more experienced. Kakashi was perhaps the best example of this. Naruto remembered when his first sensei told him the story of how he had gotten his Sharingan. During his first mission as a Jonin, he had used his prized assassination jutsu, the Chidori, to try and defeat an enemy ninja. However, due to the speed requirements needed to use the jutsu to its full potential, it's created a tunnel vision that blocked out everything except for what he was aiming for. This had been nearly fatal, and had it not been for Naruto's dad helping Kakashi Jonin sensei, his teacher would have lost his life that day. That's very nice of Boruto's grandfather. And that was exactly what happened here. Naruto had allowed himself to get so focused on pummeling the girl's face in that it had created a sense of tunnel vision, completely blocking out everything except for her face. Now he was paying the price for forgetting the lesson that story taught him. It seems a month in his new world with his chakra coils destroyed had made him soft. It's okay. There's Blue Chew and stuff. It didn't help that he could no longer sense negative emotions because he could no longer use chakra. Dang, this sucked. More blood began swelling up in his throat. Naruto gurgled as he made to surge forward and continue fighting, but toppled face first to the ground instead. It was a miracle when he managed to at least roll over and onto his back. The sound of footsteps approaching him, and the blonde got a prime view of Yuma's I don't want to do this. Before she could get far from him, Naruto's left hand shot out and lashed onto her leg. Yuma turned around in a mild surprise. "Oh, you're still alive, are you? I suppose that's fine. Just consider it punishment for getting in my way." She kicked his hand off her leg and continued marching towards Issei. As Naruto's vision began to dim, he tried to force his body to move, tried to make it do something, anything. It was all for naught. He couldn't even feel his body, much less make it obey him. Man, this sucked. Here he was trying to help someone out, but all he ended up doing was getting himself a toaster bathe. This was definitely karma. Just what did he do to earn such bad karma? Naruto's last thought were of his friends. He wondered if they were happy. Were they working together towards building a better future now that Madara and Obito and the Jubi were gone? He had finally found peace. Gods, he hoped so. It would suck even more to die and found that his sacrifice had been in vain. At least if they had created a lasting peace, he could leave this world content. As Issei bled out from the wound as his stomach, his mind going black, a small slip of paper that he had put into his pocket and forgotten about began to glow a deep crimson. The sheet of paper with the strange looking circle flew out from Issei's back pocket. There was a flash of bright light from the sheet before the sheet disappeared, and the circle that looked like something from the occult glowed a deep bloody red. The circle hovered in midair for a moment and then expanded until it was several meters in diameter, then began a slow descent towards the ground. As it slowly moved inexorably downward, a figure appeared from within it. Rias grimly looked down at the boy who she had correctly assumed possessed a sacred gear, a powerful weapon given to him by gods. It was for this reason that she had not stopped what had transpired. Not that he was dying. She could properly resurrect him and make this boy her pawn. She did not like having to gain a powerful servant like this, but she couldn't see any other way Issei would have agreed to join her peerage. Actually, she could think of one way, but Rias wasn't willing to show her assets to just anyone, regardless of whether she had little care for taboos. A cough interrupted her inspection of the boy with the gaping hole in his stomach. Startled, she turned her head towards the source of the noise and was even more surprised when she saw who it was coming from. Uzumaki Naruto, the boy who had piqued her curiosity on the roof when he had played a prank on Issei and his two friends. He was not supposed to be here. Walking over to the blonde-haired young man with hurried steps, Rias knelt down to check his injuries and found herself even more shocked when she discovered how injured he was. He was laying in a pool of blood, and there was a large hole going straight through the center of his chest. Obviously the wound that caused all the blood in the first place. Even more shocking was that he was still alive. His fingers dug tightly into the ground, creating small indents in the pavement. His eyes were flickering from bright blue to a duller, more lifeless tone. It was clear he was struggling to remain alive, but failing with an injury like that, he would bleed out in seconds. She was just shocked he was still alive. He should have bled out a long time ago. As she looked at the wound, Rias noticed something else that was odd. It was slowly, incredibly slowly. In fact, she was almost sure she was just imagining it, but it looked like his wound was closing. Of course it couldn't be. The boy was human. She could sense that much. And even if he had some kind of demonic healing, the light power from the fallen angel stopped all types of healing. Did that mean he too had a sacred gear? His eyes locked into hers, azure blue met greenish blue. There was a moment where his eyes seemed to flicker towards something behind her. What was he staring at? He smiled. It wasn't a very pretty sight, with the blood dribbling out of his mouth and staining his teeth. Still, it was a surprisingly happy smile for someone who was on the verge of their death. He coughed, causing more blood to spurt out of his throat. It was a miracle he could even speak. That wound had obviously caused blood to swell up in his lungs. Such beautiful red hair. Rias found herself feeling surprisingly flushed. No one had ever complimented her hair before. No one had complimented her with such admiration in her voice. That it came from someone who was on their deathbed was even more surprising. Absently, she reached out and held a strand of her crimson lock between the two of her fingers and twirled it around. For a moment, she wondered what she should do. In some ways, this boy had died because of her. It wasn't right that he should die because of the machinations of devils and angels. Right, there was only one thing she could do. Snapping her fingers caused a brief flash of light to appear within her hand. When the light died down, it was to reveal an object in her hand, a chess piece to be exact. It was a standard piece, a rook. With this, Rias should be able to resurrect the boy as one of her servants. She placed it on Naruto's chest and stepped back. She recited the incantation needed to meld his from the form with the chess piece. She did everything perfectly, nothing happened. Frowning, she tried another piece, her bishop. When that didn't work, she tried her knight. Again, nothing. Frowning, Rias tried to figure out why none of her pieces were working. Did the boy require something special to survive? Maybe a single piece wasn't powerful enough. Consider this a gift from your dear brother. Eyes widened, Rias summoned another chess piece. It was different from the standard chess pieces. For one, it was red. For another, it was glowing. It also did not look like any chess piece Rias had ever seen before. This was no pawn, knight, rook, bishop, queen, or even king. This chess piece was unusual. It was different. It was mutated. I believe you'll find an interesting use for this. Don't worry, you'll know when to use it. As she stared at the mutated piece, she remembered the words her brother had told her when he had given it to her. She had wondered back then why he would give her such a rare and valuable piece, but now she couldn't help but wonder. Had he foreseen this? Did he know something like this would happen? It seemed imparable, but knowing her brother, she did not discard it as impossible. 1 month, she murmured. Her brother had given this mutated piece to her exactly 1 month ago, the same exact time that Naruto had started going to her school on the scholarship fund for orphans that had been set up by the very same brother. He had even gone so far as to visit her at her school just to do that. Coincidence? Probably not. Rias decided that she was going to be having words with her brother about this the next time she saw him. Well, I guess there's nothing else to do, Rias told the blonde as he fought to stay alive. I'll not be letting you die today, so from now on you will be living for me. She placed the chess piece on Naruto's chest. Its bright glow was the only way to distinguish it from the blood running freely from the overflowing wound. The boy, surprisingly still alive, cracked a single eye open as he felt the weight of the small chess piece settle on him. I command thee, Uzumaki Naruto, on my name, Rias Gremory. As Rias held her hands over the chess piece, its bright red glow began to pick up even more luminescence than usual. Become my servant and walk these lands as a devil. Slowly, the bright glowing chess piece began to sink into Naruto's body. Thou shalt lead a new life with great joy as a member of my peerage. As the mutated piece disappeared into Naruto, the glow went with it, leaving the world once more in darkness with only the moon and stars to cast light upon the world. Naruto gasped for breath, his unconscious mind telling him he was alive. Rias watched as the boy went from being half dead to alive and well, save for the wound still on his chest, that she would need to heal manually. Still, he would be fine for now until she could make Issei her pawn and heal them too. As Rias went to resurrect Issei, she wondered what this new boy would bring. If her brother was somehow involved with them, she was sure that whatever Uzumaki Naruto brought to the table would keep things interesting. Chapter 2: The New Devil on the Block. It was looking to be the start of a beautiful morning. The sky was clear of cloud covering, the sun was shining brightly, and a gentle breeze was blowing through the city, causing the trees to dance and sway. It was the kind of day where most people would feel blessed to be alive. Uzumaki Naruto was not one of those people. He never was a morning person. He was the kind of guy who liked to sleep in as late as possible and get up well after the sun had risen. It was a well-documented fact that unless there was an important mission like, protecting a daimyo or rescuing a princess or defeating an evil demon who wants to create a golem army to conquer the world, Naruto would sleep like the dead, at least until someone woke him up. On a side note, considering who often woke him up back then, his wake-up calls were always extremely violent, not to mention painful. Despite not having any inclination to do so, Naruto did wake up as the light hit his face. Groaning in discontent, he made to sit up on his bed. Blinking several times, he once more took a moment to curse the sun, as well as his blinds. Why were they there when they did not block out the dang light was beyond him? As he absently looked around the room, a small frown formed on his face. He remembered what happened last night. That chick with the strange black wings and getting stabbed in the chest. As far as he knew, he should be dead by now. So had he gotten back to his room? And just why wasn't he dead? His hands reached to rub the center of his bare chest. The frown on his face grew even more prominent when he had only found the smooth expanse of skin. If Naruto did not know any better, he would have never believed that he had gotten stabbed by that strange spear of light in the first place. It was almost as if he had dreamed the whole thing up. Except that the only thing he ever dreamed about was becoming Hokage and being chased by large bowls of ramen come to seek vengeance on him for eating their brethren. Don't ask. Regardless, that meant last night could not have been a dream. No ramen, no Hokage, not a dream. His brow furrowing even more as he tried to figure out what happened and why he was not dead. Yet, Naruto placed his hands on either side of him so he could lean back and use them as pillar of support while he put his thinking cap on. It wasn't something he liked to do often, thinking that is, but when required to do so he could actually put that organ in his head to good use. He just preferred to not do that, because flying by the seat of his pants was more his style. As his left hand hit the bed, he felt something warm and soft, round underneath his palm. It felt absolutely nothing like the bed. He froze. On reflex, his hand gave an experimental squeeze, which prompted a sound from whatever it had grabbed a hold of. His eyes drifted down towards his bed. Only it wasn't his bed that was staring at him. It was a girl. A very beautiful girl. A very beautiful, very familiar girl. She was also very unclothed. He must still be dreaming. As he looked at the girl in his bed, he took note of several things. For one, the mound his hand was resting on was in fact the girl's assets. Her creamy white skin created an interesting contrast to his sun-kissed tan. And the light pink of her mountain stood out even more starkly as the hardened peak out from in between his ring and middle finger. He also noted that he knew this girl, well recognized her at any rate. It was the same girl he had seen with the Nadeshiko one after playing his prank on the three perverts. After leaving for class, he had asked one of his classmates about her. He had been surprised by what he found out. Apparently this girl was quite popular, the lust of all men and the envy of all women. Rias Gremory. Not that he could blame them, he thought to himself. His eyes drank in the girl's beauty, taking note of her silky smooth skin. An incredible figure, her gorgeous crimson locks fanned across the bed to create a startling contrast with the white sheets he had taken to using. By the way, those sheets, they had been discarded by the both of them some time ago, meaning he could see all of Rias. And yes, that meant all of Rias. His eyes stared at the area just above her flower. She was a natural redhead. Who knew? Reaching for his left arm with his right hand, Naruto pinched himself hard enough to draw blood. When nothing happened, the blonde shoulders slumped a bit as he scratched his head in confusion. Okay, this wasn't a genjutsu of some kind, and this wasn't a dream. So then, why was there a beautiful, undressed girl in his bed? Knowing that the answer would have to wait until the girl in question woke up, Naruto decided that the least he could do was go on and make them both breakfast. He was sure the girl could use something to eat when she woke up, regardless of how she got there. And truth be told, he could do with some grubs as well. Who knows, getting stabbed in the chest could make you so hungry. Ria's nose twitched as the smell of eggs and toast wafted to her on a breeze. Opening her eyes blearily, she found herself at a plain white ceiling. It was unfamiliar to her. She blinked several times as her mind began to process The proper process of waking up. The process was slower than usual today. She had used so much energy last night healing Issei and then Naruto that she must have exhausted herself. Because of this, it took her a while to truly wake up, but when she was finally awake, the young Gurmari was able to easily remember just where she was and why. She was in Naruto's apartment, having brought him here after resurrecting him and Issei. She must have passed out from exhaustion after healing him. And speaking of Naruto, Rias turned her head to look at the rest of the bed and blinked. When she saw the boy she had rescued was not there. Her nose twitched again as she inhaled the scent of food being prepared. Was he the one making the breakfast then? Sitting up, Rias did not even bother covering herself with the bedsheet to protect her modesty as she took a look around the room. It was a very bare room, Spartan almost. Rias had never been in a male's room before, but she imagined there would be more decorations to it. At the very least, she expected posters of various brands and even unclothed women to be hanging on the walls. All this room contained was a bed, a nightstand, a dresser, a closet, and a desk with a chair in front of it. Even then, only the desk had anything on it. Minimalistic look, I see you, Naruto. While she was studying the very plain room, the decor leading out of it opened up. The door. She craned her neck to see the very person she had been thinking of walk in. His hair was wet and matted down a little bit, though surprisingly it was still pretty spiky. He must just have gotten out of the shower a few minutes ago, and then he was only wearing his black school pants and nothing else, allowing Rias an unfettered glimpse of his torso. It was one thing to feel his body while she laid with him, but it was another to actually see the physical proof of how physically fit the boy in front of her truly was. Due to the low lighting last night, she had not been able to really catch a glimpse of his powerful frame, but now with the light from the sun filtering in through the window and brightening the room, she could see it much more clearly. There were many different body builds that men could possess. Kiba, for example, had the skinny, somewhat effeminate frame most Bishunen boys possess. Then there was the muscle-bound brutes who had the hulking, powerful figures and veiny bodies. There was also the people who could be anywhere in between, much like how women's figures could range from flat and tomboyish to full and feminine to even fat and flabby. Naruto's body was lean and highly athletic. He was thin, but it wasn't like Kiba's kind of thin. Unlike Kiba, who lacked any real muscle mass, the blonde's second year's body was packed with perfectly defined muscles. He had broad, defined shoulders. His pectoral, despite their smaller sizes than those meaty heads who spent their entire life in the gym, looked like miniature bricks, hard and firm. And while he was still skinny and had the powerful V-cut figure that many males have tried to achieve, he even had perfectly developed serratus anterior muscles on either side of his torso, which must have had a hard time getting. They added a very aesthetically pleasing look when put in conjunction with his perfectly developed and defined abs. She wondered how a former human had managed to acquire such a perfect definition. There were many among her kind who had muscles like that, but even people like her brother lacked the sheer tone found in his boy's body. There were no muscles gained through hereditary genes or demonic powers. These muscles, or, testosterone enhancers. These muscles had been gained throughout years of hard work and experience. They were muscles that were meant to be used. Good morning, the blonde teen greeted her cheerfully as he walked over to the bed carrying a tray in his hands. He did not even seem bothered by her lack of dress. Strange, most boys would have lost themselves to their lust by now. At the very least, they would have gotten a serious nosebleed. The boy just kept getting more and more interesting. Good morning, Rias graced Naruto with a smile of her own. It was an almost unconscious gesture in response to the blonde's own cheerful grin. It seemed his brightness was infectious. Naruto set the tray down next to her. It was only then that Rias realized that the tray was holding what looked like a full-course breakfast. It had a plate of scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and a side of assorted fruits. There was even a glass of orange juice set off to the side. Sorry if this isn't what you normally eat, Naruto scratched the back of his head sheepishly, the grin on his face widening so much that it forced his eyes to squint. Combined with the way his whiskers marks stretched, Rias could not help but be reminded of a fox. I would have made you a more traditional Japanese breakfast, but I'm not very good at cooking, so... Rias could not help but smile. This Naruto seemed like such a nice young man, and so helpful too. He would be a great addition to her peerage. Why is he describing a good boyfriend like a mom would? It's fine, she told him gently as she grabbed the fork that had come with the food. Thank you very much for making this for me. You did not have to. Oh, well, you know, the blonde looked away from her. Aw, he was blushing, how cute. It seemed her newest servant couldn't accept praise very well. I thought it was the least I could do since you saved me and all. He paused, then looked at her with his head tilted questioningly. With his innocent personality combined with those whisker marks, Rias could not help but think he looked adorable. Certainly not Konako adorable, but cute in his own way. You did save me, right? Yeah, I was the one who saved you, she confirmed before taking a bite of the food he had prepared for her. She blinked. This is very good, she complimented, causing him to beam. Thank you. Even though I can't make anything too complicated, I've always been good at making basic foods, he chuckled, a bit of self-deprecation mixed with good humor. When you've lived on your own for as long as I have, you learn a thing or two about cooking. I could imagine so. Rias looked at him inquisitively. She had heard he was an orphan, so his words made sense. Have you lived on your own for a long time? Over half my life, Naruto confirmed. I left the orphanage when I was raised in when I turned 6 and never looked back. The old man Hokage managed to get me an apartment to live in while I went to school. Fire Shadow. Rias blinked at the strange term. What a strange and unusual title. What is a Hokage? A Hokage is like, Naruto scratched his chin as he tried to figure out an appropriate analogy for what a Hokage was. Compared to the types of figureheads in this world, I guess you could say it's like a mayor. He's the one who was in charge of the village I grew up in. I see. What an odd name for a village leader. And a village? Did that mean Naruto had been raised in some kind of small backwater village that was stuck in a more traditional Japanese era like the Sengoku period or something? So you've been living on your own for a long time, it seems. Her curiosity was definitely piqued. What about your parents? My parents, Naruto blinked then shrugged. Never knew him. My parents died about an hour after I was born. Oh. Rias flinched a bit. How rude and inconsiderate it was of her to ask something like that. He was an orphan, so of course his parents were, not living. I'm sorry. Nah, it's fine, Naruto waved off her apology with a laugh. While I never got to know my parents, I do know that they loved me very much. Mere because they gave me their lives. Really. His smile softened a bit, resembling a mix of nostalgia and the kind content only people who have been said to have reached enlightenment had. That's all I need. Just knowing they loved me enough to give their lives so I could live is enough for me. That's a very mature way of looking at things, Rias said, smiling a bit herself. Though that was only on the outside. Inwardly she was frowning. His words bothered her greatly. From the way he spoke, it sounded like his parents had sacrificed themselves, protecting him from someone or something. Could it be that his parents were involved in otherworldly matters that usually did not involve humans? Perhaps one of the more violent devils or fallen angels that attacked his home and his parents died protecting him. And what did that say about Naruto? If there was a devil or fallen angel that had attacked him, there must have been a reason. Rias couldn't fathom what that reason was, as this boy had no sacred gear or anything of the sort. Yes, after taking him home, she had checked to see if the strange healing ability was because he had a sacred gear. Perhaps his parents had simply angered the wrong person. It didn't necessarily have to be a devil or a fallen angel who killed them. Humans were perfectly capable of toaster bathing each other. Whatever the case was, she would probably never know what happened unless she asked Naruto, but now was not the time for that. Can I ask you something? Rias looked up to see Naruto staring at her with his brows furrowed inquisitively. She offered a smile. What did you want to ask? Well, Naruto rubbed the back of his neck. This may sound rude since you healed me and everything, but why were you sleeping next to me in my bed? And why were you undressed? His eyes swept over her body and Rias finally saw the lightest traces of a blush on his cheek. It wasn't big. Alright, no need to shame here. but it was there. She smiled, pleased to know that his lack of reaction before wasn't because he didn't like what he saw. It would have been a blow to her ego if he had not found her pleasing to look at. Still, she wondered if his lack of serious reaction meant he had experience with things like this. It's fine, Rias smiled reassuringly. I understand why you would be curious. She paused. The reason I was in your bed was because I was healing your wounds. The stab wound in the chest was a fatal one. I had to saturate your body with my magic in order to heal you. Magic? Naruto adopted a slightly stupid expression as he scratched his head. You mean like the stuff where people pull rabbits out of their hat and whatnot? Rias covered her lips with her hand and giggled a bit. No, not like that. I mean real magic. You see, I'm a devil. A devil? Naruto's face scrunched up in thought. You mean like a demon or something? In layman terms, Rias confirmed with a nod, that we don't actually go by the term demon. Devils are beings born in the underworld or hell as you humans call it. I'm a pure blood devil from the Gremory clan, one of the 34 clans remaining of the 72 pillars. I see. Naruto adopted a thinking pose which involved him placing his chin in his hand while the other held up his elbow. So you're from a really important family, he looked over at her. Are you some kind of royalty or something? In a way, she said. The 72 pillars are the 72 devil clans that are what we call pure-blooded devils. Devils who were born devils and not reincarnated humans. Right now there are only 34 remaining clans of the original 72 pillars. Though some of the clans are still alive, they no longer hold their status because they have human blood mixed with them. Huh. So it's not like an earned position, but one gained because they don't mix their blood with humans. Exactly. What was that you said about reincarnating humans into devils? When a human dies, it's possible for a devil to reincarnate them as a member of their peerage. Here it was, the moment she told him about his new status. Rias mentally prepared herself for the denial the boy would show when she informed him of his new status. That's actually what I did with you. Naruto blinked. Come again? When I arrived, you don't just ask for that, you have to put in work for it. When I arrived, you were already mostly dead, Rias informed, the blonde who was staring at her blankly. Your wounds could not be healed quickly enough to keep you alive. In order to let you continue living, I had to reincarnate you as a devil. So I'm a devil. Rias nodded in confirmation. Naruto began patting himself down, causing her to look at him oddly. What are you doing? I don't seem to be any different, he mumbled to himself. And I don't feel like going out and destroying a village or sacrificing virgins or children and puppies. A second or two later, he shrugged. Oh, whatever. Might as well not sweat the small stuff, right? Rias' sweat dropped. Devils aren't like that, she informed. It's actually against the law of our kind for a devil to forcefully toast or bath a human without a just cause. Honestly, we're not that much different from humans. We just have powers humans do not have, and we've been raised in a different society than humans. She paused and added, and we're much longer lived than humans. Well, I suppose if you're the standard I can expect when meeting a devil, you guys certainly can't be bad. Naruto gave the girl a bright smile. You seem really nice, nothing like what I've read from books and stuff. That's kind of you to say. And she meant it. While most devils might be insulted for someone calling them nice, she was not. I'm glad you don't seem to hold on to the stereotypes most humans have for the devils. I just try to not judge people by what they are, but who they are. Message right there. Naruto and they say this channel isn't educational. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. To me, it doesn't matter if you're a devil or human. So long as you're a good person, there's no reason your origin should matter. I've had too many people judge me based on things other than who I am as a person. I'm not gonna do that to someone else. Also, can we appreciate the good grammar in this story? This was written like way back. There was no Grammarly and stuff. He just, or they, or she, just read the whole thing over and over again, correcting their mistakes. That's honestly goated, man. Congrats to the author. Rias watched as his hand went down to rub his stomach. She took note of the odd action but discarded it for now. Anyways, you should finish eating, Naruto informed her. We only have an hour left before school starts. Rias blinked in surprise. She'd been so caught up in talking to Naruto that she'd completely forgotten about that time. After you finish breakfast, you can take a shower. It's just down the hall on the right hand side. It's the only door in the hallway, so you can't miss it. You'll find the towels hanging on the rack to the right. Thank you. As she watched the blonde scratch the back of his neck, what she was beginning to recognize as a habitual reaction to any kind of compliment or praise. Rias could not help but think about how lucky she was to have gotten someone like Naruto on her peerage. He was quite thoughtful and kind, and he didn't even care that she was a devil, or what she had turned him into one. Yes, this Uzumaki Naruto would make an excellent addition to her peerage. How about a favorite movie? I don't really have one. Huh? How could you not have a favorite movie? Don't most people have one? Do you have one? Well, no, but I have more important things to do than watching movies. Like what? Like training. Naruto found himself walking backwards, hands behind his head and a sunny smile on his face as he escorted Rias to school. It was only right that he did so, escorting her to school, that is. Should not only save them but had been at his house anyways. Plus, this gave him the opportunity to get to know the beautiful, intriguing redhead who had reincarnated him as a devil a little bit better. Training? Rias looked vaguely curious. Naruto nodded his head. Ever since I was young, I've always trained myself in order to grow stronger. He grinned widely as he held out an arm and flexed his muscle while placing a hand over his bicep. And I think I'm pretty strong. You do seem to be pretty fit, Rias commented. Is that because of your training too? Pretty much, the blonde confirmed as they entered the school gates. All around them, students stopped what they were doing so they could stare at the strange duo. Everyone seemed shocked that the new student with the ridiculous bright blonde hair was in the company of the red-haired beauty Rias Gremory. Not that Naruto cared. He had pretty much blocked out everyone around them save the girl in front of him. Why do you train so much? Huh. Naruto blinked as he thought about her question. Then he shrugged his shoulders. Habit, mostly. I've been training for so long that it's pretty much a part of me. It just doesn't feel right for me to slack off on my training for any reason. Even if he had no purpose to get stronger for. He had been training to grow stronger for so long that it was pretty much ingrained into his very psyche. I see. Alright, so about this. What's your favorite color? My favorite color? Rias blinked and smiled. Blue. Really? Yeah, really, Rias nodded. What about you? What's your favorite color? Orange, Naruto announced proudly and loudly. Orange is the color of gods. Only someone as wise and gracious as the gods could have possibly come up with such a divine color. Rias giggled at him, causing Naruto to grin widely at the girl, uncaring that she was laughing at him. Though, I will admit, I really like red too. Do you now? Rias calmed down from her giggles and took a strand of her hair between her ring and index finger, twirling it around. So you like my hair then? Naruto nodded seriously. It reminds me of my mother. Rias perked up. Your mother? Naruto hummed. I never really got to meet my mom, but I do know a few things about her that other people told me. She was a major tomboy when she was younger, and because she had really bright red hair and a pudgy face, she earned her nickname Tomato when she was in school. Back then, I was told she had beaten up all the boys who made fun of her, and they ended up giving her the nickname Akachishio no Habanero because of her red hair and fierce temper. Rias held a hand to her mouth and giggled. She really does sound like a tomboy. Naruto grinned proudly. Yup. Anyways, because of how much people made fun of her hair back then, my mom really hated her hair. However, all that changed thanks to my dad. A small nostalgic smile appeared on Naruto's face as he remembered the story his mom had told him, the one and only time they had ever met. Mom was a very prominent person where I lived. I suppose you could say she was sort of like you. Rias looked at him curiously. She was the heir to a very powerful clan called the Uzumaki clan. Clan of the Whirling Tides? I think they were called that because of where they were originally from, Naruto said. You see, before the Uzumaki clan was mostly wiped out save for a few scattered remnants, they lived on an island that had a natural defense of dozens of whirlpools. Because of that, it was very difficult for attacking forces to invade. I see. Rias smiled at his helpful answer. Please continue with your story. Right. Well, my mom was the last surviving member of the Uzumaki clan, and this made her a target for a rival village who wanted to hold her for a ransom. They ended up infiltrating the village and kidnapping my mom. Rias found herself getting sucked into the story. What happened next? When they were taking her away from the village, my mom managed to leave a trail from strands of her hair, and the one who followed them managed to rescue her was my dad. Your dad? Yes, because when they were in school, Mom didn't actually like Dad. He chuckled a bit. She thought he looked flaky. Rias giggled as Naruto continued his story. But on that day, Mom's opinion about Dad changed. You see, he not only rescued her, but he told her that the reason he had been able to find her was because of her beautiful red hair. Well, he was the only person to ever compliment her hair color. After that day, my mom fell in love with my dad and decided that she loved her hair too. She even went so far to call her hair the red thread of fate because it brought her and dad together. That sounds like such a romantic story. Even Rias was prone to dreamy sighs after a tale like that. It was like one of those classic fairy tales people read about in fantasy romance novels. Is that why you like my hair so much? Because it reminds you of your mom? Not really, Naruto shrugged. Your hair color is a lot different than hers. They may both be red, but hers was a lot lighter, while yours is more of a crimson. He grinned as he placed his hands behind his head and looked up at the sky. I just think you have really pretty hair. He looked back down at Rias, his grin widening. That's all. I see. Rias looked away, causing the blonde to tilt his head curiously. Had he said something wrong? He thought girls liked it when they were given compliments. He looked over to where Rias was looking and saw the perverted boy he had tried to save last night staring at them. Leaning in and ignoring the loud noises coming from the other people around them, Naruto whispered, Did you reincarnate him too? Giving one last look at Issei, Rias smiled and responded by whispering in Naruto's ear. I did. Gotcha. Naruto nodded and leaned back. I just wasn't sure. I don't really remember much of what happened after. He trailed off for a second, his hand going towards where the large hole in his chest had been. I understand. Rias stopped after they entered the school building and turned to face him. She grabbed the hand Naruto had placed against his chest and moved it away so she could place her own hand there. Startled gasps emerged from those around them. Naruto ignored them as easily as he ignored the glares he used to get in his former home. You really are a kind person, aren't you? She continued, causing Naruto to blush with a sheepish smile. You wouldn't think so from how he used to act when he was younger, but Naruto was never very good at accepting praise. Worrying about someone you don't even know, even someone you seem to enjoy playing with. That was his own fault, Naruto defended himself. He and his friends were just leaving themselves wide open like that. I couldn't not prank them, you know? Rias giggled. It seems I've got a little prankster on my peerage. Peerage? Naruto blinked. Another time, Rias said. School is starting soon. She removed the hand from his chest and smiled as she backed away. I'll send someone out for you after class. Okay, Naruto? Yeah, that's fine, I guess. Naruto smiled as he waved Rias off. I'll see you later, Rias. Naruto yawned as he sat down in his seat. Class was about to start and he was already wanting to go to sleep. Man, Shikamaru was right when he said learning was troublesome. Closing his eyes, Naruto placed his hands behind his head and leaned back in his chair to rest. He could easily afford a few more moments of shut-eye. It wasn't like the teacher could say anything. Despite what many people might assume, he actually had a pretty good grade. Sure, it wasn't a 4.0 average, but a 3.1 it was pretty good. Back in Gona, everyone had called him the dead last because he sucked at theory and reading assignments. That wasn't going to happen here. He wouldn't be thought of as an idiot in this world, even if he meant he had to study. Hey, Naruto. Cracking an eye open, Naruto found a handsome young man with short blonde hair and gray eyes standing in front of him. He was wearing the standard school uniform and his blazer was fully buttoned. He sort of reminded Naruto of Sasuke in a way that all the girls seemed to think he was the hottest thing since the creation of fire jutsu. Kiba, Naruto gave the boy a bit of a lazy look. What's up? The only reason Naruto didn't have the same problems with him that he had with Sasuke is in the beginning, aside from the small fact that he had outgrown those kind of petty thoughts, was because Kiba was actually very friendly. He acted nothing like Sasuke did back when they were in the academy. In other words, he wasn't a complete jerk with 50-foot pole shoved up his back. Not much. Kiba sat down in a desk next to Naruto's. I've heard that Rias has talked to you. Rias, At the sound of the red-haired beauty's name, Naruto's face lit up in recognition. I was told she talked to you this morning? She did. The blonde-eyed his somewhat friend with the sort of casual awareness one has when they are hearing something interesting enough to pay attention, but not enough that they were totally into what was being said. I didn't know you knew her. Rias is the president of the occult club, which I'm part of, Kiba informed him with a friendly smile. Ah, Naruto nodded his head. That would explain it. From the words Kiba spoke, Naruto easily deduced that the other blonde was also a devil, and this research club was like some kind of front for Rias and the other devils to gather or something. Naruto had to thank Kakashi and Jiraiya for pounding some common sense into his head. He wouldn't have been able to figure something like this if they had not helped him. I was told you were joining the club and that I should take you to the clubhouse after school so you can be informed of what we do. Sounds good. Naruto closed his eyes. Now be a pal and wake me up when class starts. Kiwa's foot dropped a bit. Sure thing. You... Naruto stopped and cast an annoyed glare as the pervert Issei, he remembered the kid was called, came running up to him with a crazed look in his eyes. It wasn't that the kid was talking to him that bothered him so as much as it was the fact that he had things to do and places to be. Besides, Naruto had already had a hunch about what the kid could want. The brown-haired, slightly insane-looking member of the three perverts grabbed Naruto by the collar of his blazer. The unusual gleam in his eyes was not doing the pervert any favors right now. You remember Yuma, right? Right? Yuma? Naruto slapped Issei's hands away and adopted a thinking pose. After a second, he snapped his fingers and looked at Issei. Ah, you're not talking about a chick with black hair, violet eyes, and black angel wings, are you? Yes, yes. Issei was crying tears of joy at the knowledge that someone finally remembered the girl who had killed him. That's exactly who I'm talking about. Nah, sorry dude. Never heard of her before. What? Issei looked at Naruto in shock as the blonde began walking away. Moving quickly, Issei ran to catch up with Naruto as the spiky-haired blonde caught up with Kiba, who had waited for him at the end of the hall after Issei grabbed him. What do you mean you don't remember? You were there! Naruto gave Issei a bright smile. I have no idea what you're talking about. But that's... if you'll excuse me, Naruto interrupted. I have somewhere to be. Naruto could hardly contain his snickering as he left behind a dejected Issei. The last he had seen of the boy before disappearing outside of the school building was his shoulders being slumped and their head had been looking down from depression. In most cases, he would have actually felt bad about doing a prank like this, but the over-exaggerated expression on Issei's face just made it too funny for him to feel guilty about. Really, the boy was just far too easy prank. It almost made him feel really bad for pranking someone who was obviously so gullible. Almost. That wasn't very nice of you. Kiba did not sound very displeased despite his words. Naruto got the feeling his fellow blonde was amused. Hey, Naruto shrugged, snickering a bit. I couldn't help myself. The perv was just begging to be pranked. Is it because Issei is a pervert? Asked the curious Kiba. Not really. Naruto looked at his head. Shook his head. I mean, sure, it's always amusing to prank perverts because they tend to have strong reactions than most. But it's mostly because he just leaves himself so open. If he wasn't so naive and easy to fool as he was, I wouldn't have nearly as much fun pranking him. I see, Kiba laughed. He led his fellow blonde outside, and Naruto noticed immediately that they were walking towards one of the other buildings located within the academy grounds. Is the cult club not in the main building? He asked curiously. We have our own building, Kiba told them, pointing towards the large school building they were heading to. Naruto immediately noticed that it was different than the main one, older and had a slightly different style to its architecture. Despite its obvious age, it was still very well maintained. This used to be the main school building, but when the new one was built, Rias was able to auction it for the occult club. That makes sense. If they were devils, they would need a place away from praying eyes to do whatever it was devils did. And just what did devils do if they didn't sacrifice virgins, babies, and puppies? Hopefully he would find out. Naruto stood back as Kiba knocked on one of the sliding doors in the old school building. After a few seconds, a voice inside beckoned them to come in, and he opened the door. The inside of the room was clearly a cleared out classroom. The floors were made out of wood panels, and there was a chalkboard hanging on the wall behind the desk. All of the students' desks had been cleared out, and in the center of the room was a chalk drawing of a large and overly complicated circle that Naruto could not make heads or tails from. He assumed it had something to do with this place being a club for the occult, whatever that was. All around the room were items to help increase this image. He saw tables with candles and skulls on them. The chalkboard had strange symbols and writings, and over in the corner there was a very cute girl with white hair sitting on a couch and munching on Japanese sweets. Wait, what? Naruto looked over at the little girl again. She looked very young. He knew that if she was going to high school, she had to at least be 15, but with her slim petite figure and cute Lolita face, she looked a year or two younger. She had hazel colored eyes, and her hair was a pure white color with two long bangs at the front that ran down past her shoulders and several loose bangs hanging over her forehead, while the back was cut in a short bobcat hairstyle. On either side of her hair were a pair of black cat-shaped hair clips. She was also, Naruto noticed, incredibly cute, like some kind of cuddly mascot that he just wanted to pamper and pet. Maybe that was why she reminded him of a cat. Walking up to where the girl was sitting, Naruto sat down on the couch next to her and offered a bright smile. Oi, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. He offered his hand, which the girl didn't take and instead took her hands away and hid them on the other side. He noticed she was clutching the plate with her Japanese sweets rather zealously. Oh, I'm not gonna take your food, you know. I'm just saying hi. Gomensai, the girl replied tonelessly. She relaxed her guard, at least a little. Naruto noticed she was still keeping the plate away from him. Naruto, Kiba got the other blonde's attention. This is Tojo Konako, first year academy student and member of the occult club. Konako, this is Naruto. Pleasure to meet you, Naruto, Konako greeted, her voice still toneless. Naruto wondered about that, but shrugged it off. She was probably like Gaara that way, kind and compassionate, but preferred not to show it. Naruto's bright grin returned. It's nice to meet you. He reached up towards her. Konako flinched for a moment, clearly thinking he was gonna take her sweet or something. That's what he thought she was thinking at any rate. A few seconds later, Konako was completely relaxed and purring as Naruto began to gently run his hands through her hair. He gave a mild chuckle. He was right, this girl was a lot like a cat. It's good to see you again, along with your peers, Naruto. Turning his head, Naruto did not stop his gentle ministration as he watched Rias walk in with the Nadeshiko beauty behind her. Oh my, so you're Uzumaki Naruto. The Nadeshiko girl smiled pleasantly as she clasped her hands together in front of her waist. She had a very nice smile. My name is Himejima Akeno. Please take care of me. Damn. What was the proper Japanese response for that? Alright, not at all. Please treat me well, Akeno. Okay. Interesting tradition. Jeez, these Japanese traditions were hard. Not gonna make that joke. And just why did they have such weird traditions anyways? The elemental nations never had to deal with all this etiquette crap. Or maybe they did. Naruto had never been one for etiquette back then, so he wouldn't know. My oh my, Akeno delicately held her hand to her face. Such a cute little kohai I have. I think I might have to keep you. Was he supposed to respond to that? Thanks? Now that everyone is here, we can get started. Rias begun as she made to stand in front of the table and Naruto and Konako were sitting near. Kiba took a seat on the opposite couch while Akeno went to make tea. First off, welcome to the cult club, Naruto. Good to be here. Naruto smiled politely. He looked over at everyone there before looking back at Rias. Am I to take it that all of you are devils? Very good, Naruto, Rias congratulated. Naruto had graced him with a gentle smile. Yes, all of us are devils. I see, Naruto said as Akeno placed a cup of tea in front of him. Thank you. My oh my, Akeno smiled amusedly. Such a polite young man. You're welcome. Naruto stared at the raven-haired beauty for a second as she walked over to stand behind Rias, holding the tea tray to her chest. He shook his head and picked up the cup of steaming liquid, lightly blowing on it before taking a drink. Normally Naruto did not like tea, but it would be rude not to drink it. This is good, he complimented honestly after taking a small sip. He took another one as Akeno smiled at him. Thank you. As he was about to take another sip, a hand tugged at his sleeve, turning his head. He saw Konako staring at him with an imploring look. At least it was imploring to Naruto. To anyone else, it would not look any different from her normal, apathetic gaze. Naruto got his ability to read blank facial expressions from spending too much time with Gaara. Alright, sorry about that. He set the teacup down and reached out with a hand to restart his gentle petting of the girl hair. Konako melted, much to the amusement of the others. It seems he's already managed to earn the affection of at least one of us. Akeno mused and then looked at Rias. Or is it two of us? The president of the occult club frowned but still responded. I'll admit, he's a very interesting individual. He seems to gather people around him very easily, even those who have just met him, with his open and friendly personality. Including you? Maybe. You know, I'm still having a hard time believing all of you are devils. Naruto frowned. No offense, but all I can see are 3 very pretty girls and 1 blonde guy. Hey. Could've complimented Kiba as well. Ha ha ha. Ah. Kiba laughed sheepishly at being referred to as 1 blonde guy. You're blonde too, you know. Yeah, but I'm new here, Naruto shot back. I can see why you would be skeptical. Even though I already explained this, Rias said, but there's an easy way to prove what we are to you. Naruto watched with a raised eyebrow as Rias, Akeno, and Kiba all sprouted black bat wings from their back. He looked over at Konako, wondering if she would do the same. She didn't, but not because she couldn't. She was still experiencing bliss at his hands. You have wings too, you know. At that, Naruto turned his head slightly and saw that yes, he did indeed have wings. 2 bat-like wings were sprouting from his back. The blonde narrowed his eyes and focused on them, getting them to flap a bit before some more focus made them retract. Wow, that was interesting. Okay, Naruto admitted, turning his attention back to Rias. So you guys are devils? Question. Ask away, Rias gestured to him. Why are you telling me this and not Issei as well? I would have figured you would want him to be here too, since, you know, you reincarnated him as well. Rias nodded her head as if she expected that question. Very true. And I have every intention of telling Issei soon. However, Rias' countenance darkened. I believe that Issei is being targeted. Targeted, narrowed his eyes, and a calculating glint appeared within his normal, friendly and open irises. I see, you're using him as bait to find out who's targeting him. If he knew about all of this, he would be more wary, thus not reacting in a predictable manner. In other words, you need him to not know anything until you find out who's after him so that you can catch his assailant in the act. Exactly, Rias smiled brightly at the blonde. You really are quite smart. Huh. Naruto used his free hand to scratch the back of his head sheepishly. Not really, I'm just good at reading between the lines. I'm good at doing other things with lines. You know, looking underneath the underneath and all. Well, I for one am impressed with how easily you managed to figure out my plan on so little information. Naruto flushed out the praise as Rias continued complimenting him. It takes a keen mind to think up such conclusions so easily. I guess, Naruto mumbled. Coughing a bit, he tried to get back on track. So who exactly is after Issei? Rias' countenance became incredibly serious, forcing Naruto to do the same, which really just made him look kinda ridiculous, because by now Konako had taken to laying her head on his lap as he stroked and petted her head. One of our greatest enemies, Rias said with the utmost seriousness. A group known as the Fallen Angels. Issei left his friend's house feeling more depressed than before. It seems not even watching his favorite movies could lift his spirits up. He had been so sure that the blonde kid he saw with Rias the other day would have known who Yuma was. He was there when it happened. Heck, he had even saved them. Well, he tried to save them. Issei still ended up taking a light spear to the gut. But it was that thought that counted, right? Right? But no, when Issei confronted Naruto, the boy claimed to not know a thing. How depressing was that? To see the person who tried to save you not even remember what happened, or remember about the girl who he tried saving you from. Maybe it was just him, but the thought made Issei extremely depressed. Did no one remember Yuma? As he continued to walk down the street to his house and sulk, a strange feeling came over him. It was sort of like the feeling he got when he was about to be beaten by a horde of angry teenage girls. Only different. It was much more sinister and made his body shiver as a chill crept over him. How unfortunate. Issei blinked and turned around. Walking into the light of a street lamp was a middle-aged looking gentleman with short black hair and dark blue eyes. He wore an outfit that consisted of a pale violet trench coat over a white dress shirt with a matching ascot. I don't know. Black pants and shoes and a black fedora. Oh my god. He's a Reddit moderator. To actually bump into someone like you in a place like this. The man traced his fingers along the rim of his fedora. Issei stared at the man dumbly. What the heck was this idiot talking about? Not wanting to stick around any longer and feeling more than a little on edge around this guy, Issei did what he felt was the most prudent thing to do at the time. He turned around and bolted like a bat out of hell. Trying to run, the man taunted. Tell me, who is your master? I don't know why I said it like that. What the heck was this guy talking about? Master? He had no master. Issei didn't bother answering the obviously deranged man and simply focused on running. If he traveled far enough, fast enough, he would be able to lose the guy, right? Teenagers are faster than old farts like that guy, right? Did you really think I would let you run away? Issei's eyes widened as he stumbled forward, just barely catching his balance, and turned around. The man he had tried to lose stood in front of him, only he was different than the last time Issei had seen him. He had bat wings. Oh, he had black angel wings, just like Yuma. Tell me, who is your master? The man demanded. When Issei didn't answer, namely because he didn't know what the heck this lunatic was talking about, the man frowned. Or perhaps you're a stray. I can't detect any traces of your master on you, so you must be a stray. In that case, toaster bathing you will not be a problem. The man held out his hand and a bright light started to emit from it, which Issei realized with a start he had seen happen before. He should remember that light. It was the same light Yuma had made right before she ended up impaling him. As expected, a spear of light appeared in the man's hand. Issei turned to run, knowing he had to get out of there before he was toaster bathed. Perhaps if he ran far enough, he could lose this strange man with wings like Yuma. He didn't get very far, but he could he could even run a meter where he had been. An incredible pain erupted from his stomach. Issei looked down to see the cause, not surprised one bit to find he had the shaft of the light spear sticking out of his gut. This was the second time he had been stabbed by one of these light things in 2 days. What the heck? Coughing, Issei tried to pull the light spear out, only to feel more pain surge through him as his hands were literally burned by the light. You can't pull it out, can you? Damn, my boy got leg locked. The man behind him taunted. He grabbed Issei by the head with one hand, grinning like a madman. Light spears like this are deadly poison for creatures like you. Would you like me to help you pull it out? Without warning, the man ripped the light spear out of Issei's stomach through his back. Damn, he was in deep. If the pain he felt from getting it shoved in him in the first place was incredible, then the pain of having the spears pulled out was indescribable. Nothing could have prepared him for the agony he felt now. I apologize for giving you such pain. Issei just barely heard as he held a hand to the gaping hole in his stomach. He just barely managed to crawl over to a wall where he felt his life fading again for the second time. Sadly, it looks like I missed your vital organs. I'll be more accurate next time. This time, I'll definitely toaster bathe you. Just before the middle-aged man could throw his light spear at Issei, a loud voice interrupted. Dynamic entry! The last thing Issei saw was the strange man with the black wings getting smashed in the face by an orange-black blur. Naruto grinned as he landed on his feet after sending the fallen angel with the fedora flying. That felt good. Really good. If there was one thing Uzumaki Naruto enjoyed doing more than anything else was kicking butt. It was something he liked to think he was excellent in. Standing up, the blonde held his left hand in front of his face and clenched it into a fist. It was small, barely a trickle compared to the vast ocean it had been before, but he could feel it. Chakra. His chakra was returning. Even if the amount he could use was only on par with that of a relatively powerful genin, it was still enough to cause him fits of joy. It was also the reason he had managed to get here so quickly. Who are you? Naruto looked up to see the fedora man glaring at him as he held the right side of his face. The young Uzumaki was pleased to see a very large, very ugly bruise had formed on the guy's face where he had hit him. Grinning like a loon, Naruto pointed at the man. I'm the guy who's gonna kick your butt if you don't leave the kid alone. And I'm gonna help them. Smiling, Naruto turned around to see Rias standing protectively over the no longer conscious Issei. Rias, I'm glad you were able to keep up. Your speed did surprise me, Rias admitted, causing him to rub the back of his head and grin wildly at the redhead. But please, do not run off like that again. She gave him a sweet smile that made his insides feel all warm and tingly. I would hate if you ended up getting hurt, Naruto. Naruto felt himself feel a strange mixture of embarrassment and pleasure. Sorry, I just felt the strange energy this guy was giving off, and had to see what was up. He looked over at the guy in the fedora. For some reason, this strange energy he has makes me feel nervous. Yeah, it also makes any woman around him feel nervous. It's okay. I'm not surprised you can feel it, Rias said. Your senses are quite sharp. That feeling you get is because of what he is. A Reddit moderator. A fallen angel. Fallen angels are natural enemies of devils. The unease you feel around this man is your instincts as a devil kicking in. Good to know. That red hair. The fedora-wearing fallen angel murmured. I see, you wouldn't happen to be part of the Grimoire clan, would you? That's right, Rias said, smirking at the fallen angel. She absently used her hand to flip some of her hair behind her head in a display of something elegance that only a member of the royalty like her could pull off. I am Rias Grimoire. It's a pleasure to meet you, fallen angel. And I'm gonna have to ask that you stop hurting Issei here. So that's one of your underlings. The man tried to look nonchalant as he fingered the rim of his hat. It's the only thing he'll be. Never mind. With the large bruise on his face now beginning to swell, it didn't really work out. Please don't leave your servant unattended like that. Someone like myself might bump into him while accidentally taking a walk and think he's a stray that needs to be put down. Thank you for the service. For the advice. Rias casted him an amused smirk before her expression turned serious. She narrowed her eyes and placed her hands on her hips. But perhaps you should be taking your own advice. This city is under my jurisdiction. If you interfere in my business or try to hurt one of my cute little slaves again, I may have to take more drastic measures. Whoa, Naruto murmured, his eyes squinting. This is like one of those old-fashioned standoffs. I've seen things like this before. All we need now is a giant snake demanding sacrifices and a sake drinking toad and a very polite slug, and we'll have a classic standoff. I didn't know your mom was polite. What? Rias shook her head at Naruto while the fedora-wearing fallen angel decided to pretend that the boy had never spoken. It was safer for his sanity that way. With a large flap of his wings, he took off to the sky, leaving only a parting comment in his wake. The same goes for you, heiress to the Gremory family. My name is His name is Moderator. Pray that we never meet again, especially you, brat. Oi! Naruto shouted at the sky. I'm not a brat. You take that back, you flying sack of bird feathers. Don't bother shouting, Naruto, Ria said calmly as she turned to assess how badly Issei was damaged. He's already gone. Naruto grumbled, insult under his breath. Rias could not hear all of it, but what she did catch showed the breadth and width of his vocabulary. It was impressive. It was also very disturbing. Rias did not want to know what he planned on doing to that moderator with several dozen gallons of tar, rubbing alcohol, and a rubber duck. She really didn't. At least now that the fallen angels are after Issei, Naruto sighed. At least now we know. Yes, Rias nodded in agreement, which means we can plan accordingly. Do you need any help here? Asked Naruto, gesturing over to the unconscious boy with a hand. I'm not much of a healer, but I know the basics required to be a field medic. At the very least, he could stitch the kid up. That will not be necessary, Rias said, giving him a smile. But thank you for the offer. Naruto couldn't help but smile back. Anytime. Naruto sighed as he collapsed onto his bed. Today had been a rather exhausting day. He found out that he and the pervert had been reincarnated as devils and that he was now bound to Rias as a member of her peerage. The last part actually didn't seem so bad, but as far as masters went, he could definitely do a lot worse. Then there was that whole incident with Issei getting stabbed through the stomach by a fallen angel. Again, the kid seemed to be an even bigger magnet for trouble than he was. Naruto used to think his luck was pretty bad when it came to danger. His first C-rank mission had turned into an A-rank, and the rest of his career was filled with fighting S-class criminals and a giant demon. But seriously, getting stabbed twice within 2 nights time span was just screwed up. That kid must have the worst karma ever. Thinking about Issei and his stab wound made Naruto remember that Rias had said she was going to take the pervert home and heal him. That made him remember how she had healed him the other night. Wait, he said out loud to the empty room. Does that mean Rias is going to heal Issei the same way she did me? God, he hoped not. That would just not be cool. He didn't like the fact that Rias was going to be using her unclothed vivacious body to heal that pervert. Who knew what he might do to her when he woke up? Not everyone was as much as a gentleman as he was, and that Issei kid was a lot like Jiraiya in how open he was about his pervertedness. If I found out he did anything to Rias, I'll toaster bath him. It wasn't jealousy he was feeling, Naruto reassured himself. They had just met, so he didn't have any feelings for her. He just didn't want anything to happen to the girl who had saved his life. Nothing more. That was it. he could keep thinking that, whatever helped him sleep at night. Thrown into a world, Naruto Uzumaki does what he does best, cause as much chaos as possible while climbing to the top. Hokage may be out of his reach now, but that doesn't mean he can't set a new goal for his life. Chapter 3, Contracts. As morning came, Naruto found himself waking up to a strangely warm and familiar feeling. It wasn't one he had felt often. In fact, he could count the number of times he felt this way in one hand. And one of those times he felt this way, he was too busy trying to figure out why he wasn't dead to notice the feeling until, well, after he was awake. That was not the case now. With no injuries, making his mind turn elsewhere, and having a good night's rest, Naruto was perfectly aware of the undressed body laying next to him on the bed. Rather, the undressed body that was snuggled directly into his side. Looking to his left and down, the first thing he saw was red hair fanned out across his body, but the sunlight streaming through his window hitting her hair just so it made the long red tresses look like crystallized flame. Naruto was not one to wax poetics, but it was easily the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The second thing he saw was Rias as she slept peacefully, blissfully unaware that he had woken up. The covers had been pulled down to their waist, exposing her inviolable assets for his eyes to see. She was turned slightly on her side, facing him, and was using his shoulders as a pillow. Naruto could feel every inch of her bountiful curves as they pressed onto him, as they were pulled flush against him. He did not have much experience with women, but he did have some. Contrary to popular belief back home, he wasn't completely inept when it came to the opposite sex. He had Jiraiya as a teacher, for God's sake. You don't come back from a 3-year training trip with the world's biggest pervert and not pick some things up. And Sakura always said he was dense. Who was dense now? Not him. No, sorry. He wasn't dense in the slightest. Well, maybe he was just a little dense. Just a bit. Anyways, those few women he had previous encounters, we'll call them, with, were all put to shame by the beauty laying against him. He really didn't think there was another creature that could possibly be as beautiful as this girl right here. Of course, these were all secondary thoughts, things he noted with interest but was not really concerned with. There was only one thing he currently wanted to know. How had she gotten in? That was the first thing Naruto wanted to know. He had a ton of traps set up all around his apartment, especially by the windows and front door. They only ever came down when he needed to leave and come back, immediately after he left, and he had made sure she had not seen his traps work when they left for school the other day. So how did she manage to get into his bedroom? Was there some kind of method of breaking and entering people's bedrooms that devils had that could bypass all his defenses? Not that Naruto was actually complaining, mind you. While not as bad as, say, Issei, Naruto was still a healthy male, and he had Jiraiya as his sensei. Even if Naruto did not follow in his godfather's footsteps of watching women, he still had a larger than average libido. He was just better at not showing it and had more respect for women than either Jiraiya or Issei did. That's what happens when you have Sakura as a teammate and Senju Tsunade as a mother figure. You gain a healthy amount of respect and fear of women. Having Shizune as an older sister figure probably hadn't helped either. Dang, that was a lot of women who hated perverts in his life. Good thing he had Kakashi and Jiraiya to offset those women's influences. Shaking his head, Naruto dispelled those nonsensical thoughts. None of them helped him with his current problem. Namely, what should he do now? It was morning, so technically speaking, he should probably get up and get started on breakfast, or maybe even take a shower, before Rias woke up so that she could use it after him. At the same time, Naruto glanced down at the girl using him as a pillow. His arms were wrapped loosely around her thin waist, his hands resting on the middle of her back, pulling her closer. He could feel her body pressed against his. Her bare assets felt magnificent against his torso, and one of her legs had hooked itself around his right leg sometime during the night. The silky smoothness of her skin brought an almost intolerable pleasure, causing shivers to run down his spine. Her hair was splayed out across his chest, draping him in a crimson curtain of velvety satin. I don't know. She hadn't done that the last time she slept with him. At least he was sure she had not done this the last time. Then again, his mind had not been all there when he first woke up. For all he knew, she could have been this close and he just pushed her off when he sat up. Hadn't she told him that healing him had required them to have as much skin contact as possible? Makes you wonder why she was here now. As much as he knew he should probably get breakfast started or something, he really didn't want to leave the comfortable warmth that having a beautiful girl sleeping with him brought, and so Naruto decided to relax. If he was late for school, so be it. He was far too comfortable to move right now, and he didn't really care about school, so it was a win-win situation in his book. As he let his mind wander to nonsensical thoughts like what kind of ramen should he have for lunch, and wonder if Sakura managed to pull that stick out of Sasuke's his hand began to absently rub up and down Rias' torso and hips. This action caused the girl to snuggle against him to begin staring. As a soft yawn escaped from the red-haired, greenish-blue-eyed girl's mouth, Naruto looked down to see Rias lifting her head from his shoulder and blinking several times as she found him staring at her. "Good morning, Naruto," Rias mumbled, smiling a bit. Naruto returned a smile with one of his own. "Good morning, Rias. I'm kinda surprised to see you today." He frowned, turning his head a bit so that she would not see the expression on his face. "I kinda expected you to still be with Issei." He tried to not show it, but it bothered him to think of her with Issei. He still wasn't jealous though, just concerned. "You know, since you held him last night and all." Rias pushed herself into a sitting position, once again heedless of her own unclothedness. Naruto found his eyes unconsciously traveling towards her assets as they bounced and jiggled with each movement made. They were very perky despite their size, no sag at all. Even though they were quite large, it looked like they didn't even need Anyway, her pink looked very enticing right now, and that moment he wanted nothing more than those in his mouth. And okay, you know what, we're gonna skip ahead a bit. And did he really just think that? Dang, that Jiraiya, even in death, his corruption ran deep. Is that the only thing running deep? Naruto supposed he should just be glad he didn't end up like Issei. He could only imagine the trouble he would have gotten in had he been like that kid. He shuddered at the thought of all the beatings he would have received from Sakura and Tsunade. "I thought about it," Rias replied to his unasked question. Her words also had the effect of knocking him out of his small moment of perversion and caused him to look at her in the eye, but decided against it. While Issei's reaction to my presence would have been amusing, I felt it might be a bit too much if I were to appear undressed in his bed. "Is that so?" Naruto released the breath he did not know he was holding, something Rias immediately noticed and latched onto. "Why do you ask?" There was an innocent smile on her face that Naruto felt really did not belong there. It was far too innocent to be real. No reason, I guess," Naruto mumbled a bit. He felt strangely vulnerable under that gaze, just a bit worried about my new friend. When Rias merely continued smiling, Naruto felt an inexplicable urge to explain himself. "It's just that I know perverts very well. My old sensei was the biggest pervert I ever met, so I know how they work. If you were to show up in Issei's bed like this, he may try to take advantage of you." Rias hummed thoughtfully but still didn't say anything. For some reason it was making Naruto a bit self-conscious. "So, why'd you decide to come here and not simply head back home?" he asked, simply for lack of having anything better to say. Rias tilted her head, the smile still on her face. "I just wanted to become closer to my cute new servant. Nothing more." "That's the only reason?" "Yup." "So, you did this to be closer to your servant?" Naruto mumbled before looking back at Rias. "Does that mean you've done this with Yuto, Konoko, and Akeno as well?" "Well, no." Rias shook her head. "But Yuto's not really the type to enjoy this sort of thing, and Akeno and Konoko-chan aren't really into this either, although..." The red-haired beauty looked immensely thoughtful as she seemed to remember something. "I have occasionally slept with Akeno. We're best friends after all, so it's only natural." "I see." He really didn't, but said that for lack of having anything of substance to say. Anyways, you should probably take a shower and get dressed while I make breakfast. A smile crept onto Rias' face, causing Naruto to deadpan. That's why you're here, isn't it? So I can cook for you? Of course not, Rias smiled indulgently. That's just a bonus. Whatever, Naruto sighed. Just take a shower. Rias sighed softly as she stood in the shower, steaming hot droplets of water ran down her gorgeous body, coasting over her slender shoulders, climbing across the two large mounds on her chest and making adventurous trips through the valley of her assets. They round down her smooth, flat stomach and followed the small trimmed patch of red hair before roving across the valley of her lips and finally falling off to join the thousands of other drops of water on the shower floor, while other droplets ran the longer course across her beautiful shaped thighs and calves. As she finally decided to pick up the bar of soap and wash herself, on a side note, Naruto had a good taste in soap. Her mind, I don't. Soap is not it. Her mind wandered towards one of her newest servants, namely the blonde one whose apartment she was currently in. She had not been lying when she said that her reason for not still being with Issei was because she thought him waking up to an undressed woman might be a bit much. As funny as his reaction would be, she didn't want him to be distracted from what she would eventually need to tell him, and if he was thinking about her assets, he would be distracted. But there had been another reason for her to come to Naruto, and it was not just because he had actually made a very good breakfast last time. There was something strange about Naruto. Off the circumstances that led to him being here, he showed up at her school exactly 1 month ago, and exactly 1 month ago her brother had given her a very special mutated piece, something so rare only every 1 in 100 devils had one. There was simply no way that these two incidents were not connected. Her brother knew that Naruto would be going to her school and knew that there was something special about him. We just wanted to find out what, and since she had not been able to get in contact with her brother, she would have to figure why Naruto was so special on her own. That's why she had decided to come over to his house, why she spent so much time with him. What's more, the mutated piece she had used looked nothing like the other pieces she'd ever seen. They always, her brother had a few of them, so she knew what they looked like. They always still carried the general shape of what they once were. The mutated piece he gave her looked nothing like a standard chess piece. It wasn't a pawn nor a rook, knight, bishop, or queen. It wasn't a king either. It was none of those things. That intrigued her as well. There must be something truly special about Naruto if the only evil piece that worked for him was this unique mutated piece she had never seen before. That it wasn't considered a standard evil piece and therefore meant she still had her bishop, knight, and rook pieces as the icing on the cake. Stepping out of the shower, Rias began the long, arduous process of drying herself off. Most of the drying was simply her hair, which she had a lot of. It had been suggested that she cut it before, but Rias rather liked her hair and wouldn't hear anything of it. Besides, Naruto had complimented her hair. For some reason, that made her feel it was special. After getting dressed in her school uniform, the young Gremory heiress made her way into the kitchen. It wasn't actually what she would call a kitchen, more of a small place to cook combined with a moderate-sized living room. The kitchen was incredibly tiny and only separated from the rest of the room by the floor changing from carpet to tile. Naruto was standing over the stove, making breakfast. She didn't know what it was, but it smelled pretty good. Deciding to see what he was making, she walked directly behind him, pressed her chest against his back, and placed her chin on his shoulder as she looked over him to the pan. "What are you making?" "Just scrambled eggs." Naruto did not seem all that surprised by her sudden action. It made her rather curious. Most people would have at least been surprised. Most men would have gotten a nosebleed or at least a blush with how she was pressing her assets against his back. "Naruto?" He acted as if he knew what she was going to do before she had done it. "However, I decided to add some whole milk, cheddar cheese, and chopped vegetables to it," he continued, heedless of her inner thoughts. "I never used to like vegetables, but when I was younger, but my godfather showed me that if I cook them with something, I don't have to taste them while eating." "That's certainly an interesting way of making sure you eat healthy," Rias commented as she filled something more important away. Filed something. His mentioning of having a grandfather. I thought you didn't have a family. I don't. Naruto paused. It was only for a moment, but Rias noticed the hitch in his voice enough to realize what she had just said. Sorry, she mumbled softly. With guilt setting in, Rias wrapped her arms around his torso, hugging him from behind. I didn't mean to bring that up again. It's fine. Naruto blew out a deep breath. She turned her head slightly to look at him from out of the corner of her eye, and saw him looking back with a very small, understanding smile. You're curious. I get that. I don't blame you for that, and I really don't mind telling you a little about myself. Her response to his words was to tighten her hold on him. I hadn't even met my godfather until I turned 12, Naruto informed her, because he had a very important job that was too dangerous for him to take me with. He had to leave me in the village, of course. I didn't even know he was my godfather until after he had been bathed. He had never mentioned that to me. I'm still a little angry about that. Killed? Rias was surprised by how startled she sounded, or maybe not. Hearing the words from her newest peerage member lips was shocking. To think that one of her servants had both his parents and godfather toaster bathed so early in his life. She could only imagine how he must feel. Rias didn't know if she would have been able to go on if her parents or brother had been toaster bathed. Yeah, he was toaster bathed by a former student of his, Naruto said solemnly. A man by the name of Nagato. I confronted my fellow apprentice several weeks after his death, and we managed to reach an understanding. I still haven't forgiven him, the blonde added as an afterthought, but at the same time, I know that Jiraiya would be disappointed in me if I walked down the path of revenge. So even though he toaster bathed our sensei, I won't allow myself to hate him. Ah, I see. Rias grew silent as she contemplated the blonde's words. She had already noticed it by now, despite the short time she had known him, but Naruto, in spite of the happy-go-lucky attitude of his, was incredibly mature for someone his age. In some ways, his thoughts and maturity reminded her of her brother, when her brother wasn't being stupid at least. The crimson-haired devil wondered what he must have gone through to gain such maturity for someone so young. She also hoped against all odds that he did not act as stupid as her brother sometimes did. Breakfast is just about done. Naruto's voice snapped Rias out of her thoughts. You should go sit down. I'll bring it to you in just a minute. Okay. Rias decided to do as asked. She unwrapped her arms from his torso and walked over to the small table where she sat down. She watched as Naruto went about getting 2 plates and some silverware. He placed the scrambled eggs on the plate and walked over to place one of them in front of her while the other one was set on the opposite side of the table. Would you like to drink anything? Okay. I don't know why I checked to see if I was still recording. Rias scrunched up her nose and thought, milk is fine, or orange juice, if you have any. I definitely have orange juice. Naruto grinned as he got 2 glasses from the cabinet and a pitcher of orange juice from the fridge. With a name like that, how could I not? Rias giggled as the blonde brought the glasses of orange juice to the table. I guess the color orange really is your favorite, she commented lightly as he put the glass in front of her. Breakfast was actually kind of pleasant. They didn't really talk much, but that was okay with both of them. Cause it gave Rias time to digest and think about the information she'd learned. He was a very open and friendly person, even when she mentioned things that clearly still hurt to think about. He didn't get mad and answered all of her questions. She didn't doubt for a minute that he was being honest with her. She could already tell he was not the type to lie, though a part of her felt like there was much more to learn. Despite being so friendly, the boy sitting at the table sharing breakfast with her was still very much so a mystery she aimed to solve. Naruto. Rias started making the blonde look up from his plate. Would you mind doing me a favor? Sure. Naruto shrugged as if it was no problem. What do you need from me? After school today, I need you to grab Issei and bring him to the occult research club room, Rias told him. I think it's time I introduced him to the rest of my peerage and explain his situation to him. Also, there are some things I need to inform you and him on that comes with being a newly minted devil. Like those contract things you mentioned last night, right? Yes, Rias smiled at him. So, will you do it? Of course. Naruto, bright grin came full force. He gave the redhead a thumbs up. It was kind of corny, but also seemed like a very Naruto-ish thing to do. Don't worry, Rias. I'll bring the perf to the clubroom after school. Issei groaned as the last day of class ended. Nothing seemed to be going right after the young pervert whose only real desire was to see a pair of real-life assets. This entire week had been one big mess of confusion and anxiety. It all started with the beating he and his two friends had received at the hands of the kendo club, followed with the being stabbed by his apparent non-existent ex-girlfriend, and culminating in getting stabbed once more by a person who had black angel wings like Yuma did. Honestly, with all the bad things going down in his life, it almost felt like someone was out to get him. Maybe God was trying to smite him for being so perverted. That couldn't be. It was the day after the last attack, and he had no clue as to what was going on. This morning he had woken up in his bed, the wound on his chest completely healed as if it never happened, and he was feeling inexplicably tired for some reason. Not to mention confused and worried. Issei couldn't help but feel like he was slowly going insane. Not even the thought of peeping on the girls at school while they were in the locker room was enough to help him out of his worry, which really just drove the point home that Issei, a male known for his incredible lust, was too worried to even watch girls when they were changing. Then he just knew there was something wrong. Muttered whispers broke out around the classroom, but Issei ignored them, and his friend inane chatter about the girls they would be peeping on soon. He was too tired to care right now. Oi! A loud brash voice sounded. Pervert! Issei looked up at the sound of the voice, his curiosity getting the better of him to see the same blonde he had been so sure would have remembered Yuma standing in front of him with a bright grin on his face. For some reason that grin made Issei really want to punch him. Are you talking to me? He asked uncertainly. Who else would I be talking to? The blonde asked rhetorically. Rias wants to talk to you, so I'm here to escort you to see her. Now pack your crap and let's go. Issei stared at the boy in confusion. Rias, as in Rias Gremory, one of the two greatest ladies of Koh Academy, wanted to talk to him? Why? Naruto walked into the Occult Research Club room with a confused Issei following him behind. All of the members were already there. Rias was standing with her arms crossed under her impressive bust, while Akeno stood behind her, hands clasped together in front of her, which had the effect of pushing that monstrously large asset together in a very appealing way. Leaning against the wall to his right was Kiba, and sitting on the couch munching on some manju was Konako. Ahoy! Naruto stated cheerfully as he walked in and sat down next to Konako, trailing after him, looking both unsure of himself and incredibly aroused as he stared at the trio of beautiful girls he knew he now found himself in the presence of Issei. Issei took a seat in one of the empty easy chairs. My oh my, Akeno sounded incredibly amused by the young blonde teen's greeting. Good afternoon, Kitsune. Kitsune, Naruto tilted his head inquisitively. Whisker marks, Konako commented as she sat her food down on the table and crawled over to the blonde. Ah, Naruto murmured as he absently rubbed a finger down one of the whisker-like markings on his face. During that time, Konako sat herself down on his lap and looked up at him imploringly. Naruto got the hand and grinned as he raised the hand and began to gently run his finger along her scalp. Konako sighed happily as she once more experienced bliss. Wanting to get more of that incredible feeling, the first year curled herself against Naruto and began rubbing her face against his chest. That just made him even more amused, and he couldn't help but indulge the girl a little more. Definitely a cat. A little ways the way Issei looked like he was trying to decide whether he wanted to strangle the blonde for what he was doing or worship him for the same exact reason. To think this man was capable of getting such a cute little Kohei to enjoy sitting on his lap, it was both awe-inspiring and incredibly depressing for the boy student who would like nothing more than for a girl to sit on his lap and rub her face against his chest like that. My oh my. Akeno giggled at the sight of the normally stoic girl turning into a puddle from the blonde simple head pats. She She really has taken a liking to our kitsune, hasn't she, Rias? Akeno looked over at her best friend and king, and probably felt a bead of sweat trickle down the side of her forehead when she saw Rias staring disapprovingly at Naruto as he pampered the 15-year-old silver-haired first year. My oh my. Being Akeno, however, she recovered from her surprise very quickly. Is someone feeling a bit jealous of Konoko? Asked Akeno, causing Rias to finally turn her head from the scene to face her queen, the frown growing even more prominent. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't, was Akeno's sly reply. Rias ignored her best friend's demure giggling and cleared her throat quite loudly. Everyone looked over at her, well, almost everyone. Konoko was still in paradise as Naruto's hand were now in the process of carefully rubbing along her ears, which had the girl emitting an audible purr that rumbled from deep within her chest. Rias' eyes twitched. Well, she stated, doing her best to ignore Konoko. She wasn't angry or jealous. No sir, she just didn't like being ignored. Now that you're here, Issei, I would like to welcome you to the Occult Research Club. No. Issei rubbed the back of his head as he tried to think of what to say in this situation. It wouldn't be so hard if all the girls around him weren't there. We still talking about his response, or anyways? He was having trouble just figuring out which pair of assets to look at. Rias' were so perky, yet Akeno's seemed to have the biggest size, and there was something to say for Konoko's little ones. They were so cute. Thanks for having me. I'll be in your care. Rias smiled, or tried to smile. She didn't quite succeed. She eventually gave up. Deciding to give it up as a lost cause, she continued speaking. As you know, I am Rias Gremory. The one behind me is Akeno. The person leaning up against the wall is Kiba, and the two people, her eyebrows twitched again, sitting on the couch are Konoko and Naruto. We, that is to say, all five of us, are devils. As the silence stretched on, with only the sound of Konoko purring to accompany the chirping of the crickets, Issei could only sit there, blinking stupidly as he tried to come to grip with what he had just been told. Huh? He scratched the back of his head. Could you repeat that? I could have sworn you just said you guys were devils. We are, Rias confirmed. To further emphasize her point, Akeno, Kiba, and Naruto all sprouted black devil wings from their backs. Konoko would have done so easily, but well, she was still in happy land. Issei could only stare at the wings coming from behind everyone else's back in shock. Wait, he pointed at them, yelling his head off in surprise. So you guys are devils? I don't see why you're so surprised, Naruto said, smiling down at the girl in his lap. She really was just too adorable for her own good. You're a devil too, after all. Huh? That comment threw Issei for a loop. Him? A devil? What nonsense was this? Wouldn't he know if he was a devil or not? Shouldn't there be some kind of sign or something? Aside from an irritating rash in the skin that he got a while ago, he didn't feel any different, and he didn't have any desires to go and sacrifice puppies or something. Just look at your back, Rias suggested. You have wings just like the rest of us. I do? Issei's question was answered by the sound of cloth tearing. Looking behind him, the boy found himself in shock to see that he really did have wings sprouting from his back, black devil wings that reminded him of a bat's, much like the ones everyone else was sprouting. This just seemed to depress them. I really am a devil, the boy nearly wailed as he crumbled to his knees. As he pressed his hands against the floor to keep himself from falling, all those present watched as a small gray rain cloud appeared over the second-year student's head and begun sprinkling him in a slight drizzle. Cue massive sweat drop. Anyways, Rias cleared her throat and tried to ignore the boy who was getting her floor wet with this strange rain cloud. Just where had it come from anyways? Some kind of strange devil powers that she didn't know of? I reincarnated you as a devil and my servant after you were killed by a fallen angel a few days ago, and the girl trailed off uncertainly as the boy continued looking like a despondent young man who had just been dumped by his ex-girlfriend or stabbed through the chest with a light spear by his ex-girlfriend. Either or. Are you even listening to me? No, he wasn't. Issei was currently in the middle of a midlife or young life crisis. He had just been told he was a devil and had wings from his coming out his back, and this was on top of everything else that had happened this week. Not only that, but he still had yet to see a pair of actual... Okay, buddy, chill. It was official. He really was going insane. Naruto sighed as he watched the depressed kid get soaked to the bone by the strange cloud of rain, deciding that he should do something about this because seeing the normally carefree, if incredibly perverted second year have a look of someone who had just had his puppy killed was pathetic. He carefully set Konako down and stood up. He didn't get to move very far as the white-haired girl in question grabbed his sleeve. The blonde looked down at the girl who was giving him large puppy dog or cat eyes that nearly had him bending down and scooping her back into his arms. Don't worry, he told Konako. I'll be right back. Okay, Konako mumbled. She looked up at him with her big amber-colored eyes. But come back soon. That look should be illegal. Naruto was almost overwhelmed by the cute. Don't worry, it won't be more than a few seconds. Konako finally let go of his shirt sleeve and Naruto turned to look at Rias, who was looking very unsure of what to do. Not that he blamed her. Rias, he got her attention. Do you mind if He gestured over to the still despondent Issei. Not at all. Rias looked relieved. She really didn't know what to do in this situation. Most people went through shock when they realized they had been turned into a devil, but she had never seen someone look so depressed before, and her floor was now soaking wet from the rain cloud. Thanks. Naruto flashed her a quick grin before turning around and walking over to Issei. Without a pause or hesitation, the blonde grabbed the boy by the back of his car, hauling him to his feet, and began dragging him along as he walked towards the door. Oi, what do you think you're doing? Don't worry, I just have to explain a few things. I think you'll appreciate what I have to tell you. Naruto's voice faded into the distance as he left the room and walked down the hall. So, what do you think Naruto wants to tell Issei? Asked Kiba, finally deciding to speak up for the first time since they got to the club room. Who knows, Rias said, shrugging her shoulders helplessly as she gave an I'm just as clueless as you look. I just hoped whatever it is, it gets Issei to stop moping. She didn't think her carpet could take much more water damage. I want more head patting. Everyone's sweat dropped as Konako spoke in the monotone voice she was so well known for. It was even stranger because of what she was talking about. My oh my. Everyone except for Akeno, that is, who really just looked amused by the girl's unusual antics. A few minutes after they left, Issei came running into the room, a fire in his eyes. He went straight towards the stunned Rias, who almost took a step back when the male got right in her face. Is it true that if I get strong enough, I can have a harem? God dang it. Rias was at a loss for words. Just what did Naruto tell this boy? I guess if you get strong enough, you can eventually be considered a high-class devil and have your own peerage, which can be like a harem, sort of. She trailed off when she saw Issei's face light up even more. The young man grinned, his eyes burning with an unyouthful fire as his hands clenched into fists. Heck yeah! The shot was so startling and loud that Rias took a step back. I want to be a devil. Now I can throw away all my movie magazines. He shouted without shame. Then he crouched down, a look of utter defeat on his face, his index finger drawing circles on the floor. No, I can't do that. Those are my treasures. There's no way I could give them up just because I have a harem. Movies and personal experience are two different things. When you said we might have an idiotic little brother join our peerage, I hadn't realized he would be so enthusiastic. Akeno tried to find the right word to describe the boy. Well, enthusiastic was certainly an accurate description of Issei, though lecherous would have worked much better. He's certainly unique. Rias tried to be diplomatic, failing that she turned her head to look at Naruto as he sat back down again and was immediately glomped by Konako. Just what did you say to him? I just explained one of the many perks he could get if he worked really hard at being a good devil. Naruto explained with an amused grin as he went back to pampering his cute little kohai. Being a male and one who is used to dealing with people like him, I know how to explain his situation in a way that would help him get over his issues quickly. Right. Rias looked over at the new fired up Issei and wondered if using his personality to make him get over being a devil was the best move. Probably not. Well, if nothing else, at least the boy would now be receptive to her teaching. That is, if he could concentrate long enough to actually learn anything. Our race has two enemies. Once Issei had calmed down from his dreams high, Rias began teaching the boy some of the basic information he would need to know for his new life as a devil. Angels and fallen angels. Fallen angels that have fallen from grace signified by their black wings. They're angels who were cast out of the heaven and sent to hell due to their wicked nature and impure thoughts. Naruto already knew most of this information being shared to the other boy didn't pay as much attention to the lecture. Instead, he was focusing his time on the girl who had curled up in his lap. He did keep an ear out though, just in case Rias said something she hadn't mentioned yesterday. Devils want to retain control of hell while the fallen angels are trying to take it over. We have been battling the fallen angels ever since. Issei scratched the back of his head. He looked very confused. We devils make pacts with humans for a price in order to obtain more power via their desires, whereas the fallen angels take control of humans and use them to destroy devils. Moreover, Rias continued, heedless of the blank look on Issei's face, God has tasked many angels with the goal of destroying both the fallen angels and devils, making the situation a three-way standoff. It's been like this for a long time now. Was the gist of everything though, not absolutely everything. This was just a bare bone basic facts. Rias did not want to bombard Issei with too much information right now. Going to a more detailed lecture about the history of the three factions would probably take several months to learn. What she told him now should be enough for him to understand his situation. Do you understand everything I just told you? Naruto watched with an amused look on his face as Issei began scratching at his cheek, his confusion more than evident. Not really. All this stuff about devils and angels and fallen angels is really too complicated for a normal high school student like me. Everyone looked at Issei with a massive bead of sweat that literally looked like a drop of water forming on the side of their heads. Naruto especially. He might not be the sharpest kunai in the set, but even Naruto was not that stupid. He could understand things so as long as they weren't explained in an overly complicated way. Granted, he probably wouldn't have been able to make sense of Rias' lecture when he was 12, but that would have been more due to a lack of caring than anything else. He hated lectures. Even Konako was now staring at Issei like he was some kind of idiot, which he kinda was, though Naruto was being hypocritical in his thoughts. No, wait, Konako was actually glaring at him because his inability to understand his situation had caused Naruto to stop petting her hair. Never mind. What about this girl? Rias decided to try a different approach and handed Issei a photograph she had grabbed from off the desk. Issei took the photo from her and looked at it. Yuma? He said in shock. Staring him in the face from within the confines of the photo was none other than the girl who had tried to kill him and succeeded. Where'd you get this? That's the girl that almost toaster baited you and Naruto, Rias told him. She's actually a fallen angel. But then, this means she really does exist. Yes, Rias nodded. She really exists. I suspect she erased herself from everyone's mind to keep from being discovered. But then wait, Issei suddenly paused as he realized something. If you knew about Yuma, that means... He looked over at Naruto, who had gone back to petting a nearly blissed out Konoko, stood up and pointed an accusing finger at the blonde that he felt insanely jealous of. You knew about Yuma all along, didn't you? Took you long enough to figure out, Naruto smirked. Why did you tell me you didn't know about her then? Asked an angry and somewhat distraught Issei. Because I thought it'd be funny. The answer he received actually caused Issei to face fault, his face smacking into the ground. The lecherous high school student groaned at his misfortune. He lifted his head a few seconds later to look at a slightly unsure Rias. So wait, you said you had reincarnated me as a devil after she toaster bathed me, right? Rias nodded, still looking a bit concerned by how Issei was acting. Then why'd she try to toaster bathe me in the first place? I mean, I've never been involved in any of this devil and fallen angel stuff before, so why me? I suspect it's because you have a sacred gear, Rias explained as Issei stood back up. She looked very relieved to finally be getting down to one of the main topics she wanted to bring up. Just how things had taken so long to get to this point was beyond her. Sacred gear? Issei frowned, his head lowering and his brows furrowed as he adopted a thoughtful pose. I could have sworn I've heard about that before. Akeno decided to pick up some of the slack here and began explaining what a sacred gear was to Issei. Sacred gears are basically artifacts given to humans by the original god from the Bible to enact miracles on Earth. Only humans or human hybrids are born with sacred gears, though they can show up within the ranks of the devils and angels if the human possessing the sacred gear is turned. Issei, Rias got the boy's attention as she pointed at him. You have one of those sacred gears within you, a very powerful one if I'm not mistaken, which is the reason that fallen angel tried to toaster bathe you. Most likely she was ordered to by the higher ups who feared whatever sacred gear you possessed. Issei stared at the red-haired beauty for several long, silent moments, right before he exploded and took her words in an entirely wrong way. Huh? The lecherous second year put his hand in front of his pants, which he was almost positive the girl was pointing to. She wasn't, but he thought she was. I know I'm a super healthy and viral guy, but are you telling me that is actually a super famous tool nicknamed the Sacred Gear? Within his mind, Issei conjured up an image of various women coming to claim his sacred gear for themselves. He saw them seeking it out, fighting over it, toaster bathing over it. Wars started simply because all the women in the world wanted his famous sacred gear. It would have been nice to see so many beautiful ladies fighting over his sacred gear, but if a war got started over him, then wouldn't his life be in jeopardy? As Issei's mind began taking a most unusual and lecherous turn, to others in the room watched the perverted boy's mind run rampant. No, really, there was actually a large viewing bubble that appeared over Issei's head and was showing his thoughts to all of them like it was some kind of movie. Needless to say, the sweat dropping would not be stopping anytime soon. After the incident where everyone got an unwilling glimpse inside of Issei's mind, the group of devils collectively agreed to forget about that incident altogether. No one felt safe thinking about what they saw. The perversion that the newest member of the peerage possessed, yes, it was much better to just pretend the whole viewing bubble thing never happened. Safer for their sanity that way too. Anyways, Issei, we're going to hurry. We're gonna try to bring out your sacred gear, Rias continued. This was, of course, after he had managed to convince the boy that no, they were not talking about his trunk. It took a lot longer to convince him that his trunk was not a sacred gear than it should have. But really, what else could I have expected when dealing with a boy known for his lecherousness throughout the school? I want you to close your eyes and take a stance that makes you feel empowered. A stance that makes me feel empowered. The boy parroted, looking a little lost. He was now standing as opposed to sitting, mainly because Rias had prompted him to stand, and who was he to deny a beautiful girl what she wanted? Still, that didn't make him any less confused by her words. Naruto watched in amusement as the boy bent his legs and put his hands together like he was holding something in them. It was obvious the blonde-haired Uzumaki was enjoying himself, and why wouldn't he? Issei looked absolutely ridiculous. This is the dragon wave from my favorite manga, Doraku Sapporo. It was such a strange pose that Rias could not help but feel a small drop of sweat trickle down the side of her face. Really, what exactly was this boy doing? Did he expect the sacred gear would manifest as some kind of powerful energy blast that would annihilate everything in its path? Don't you mean the Kamehameha wave from Dragon Ball Z? Asked Naruto, butting in the moment. No, Issei resorted with a scowl. I'm not talking about that sellout of an anime. Doraku Sapporo is way better than Dragon Ball Z, though I will admit it was pretty good until after the Cell Saga. Yeah, no, that's kind of facts. The Namek arc was my favorite, personally. If DBZ a sellout, then Doraku Sapporo is a copycat. They totally stole the dragon wave from Master Roshi's Kamehameha. Who asked you? The boys. Rias said with frazzled calm. No fighting, Naruto. Just keep a vein popped up on her head. She couldn't believe she was about to say this. Keep entertaining Konako. Issei, focus. Yes, Rias, sure thing. My oh my, Akeno held a hand up to hide the amused smile on her face. Things really do seem to be getting interesting these days. She gave a demure giggle. These two are most definitely unique individuals. Kiba chuckled. That's a bit of an understatement. From what I've seen, nothing's going to be boring with these two around. Ria sighed as she listened to the conversation of her peerage and begun instructing Issei on how to properly activate his sacred gear. Meanwhile, Naruto focused on the cutie sitting on his lap. This would have come as a surprise, but to most people, this wasn't the first time he had someone sitting on his lap, or even the 100th time. Of course, that sounded a lot more explicit than it actually was. The last time someone sat on his lap had been when he was telling the children in Konoha a story about his past pranks during the rebuilding process after Naga had destroyed the village. That time it had simply been the harmless act of a child wanting to be closer to their hero. What was happening here was a bit different. Konako had all the cuteness and adorableness one would accept of a child, yet possessed the sensual body of a bounding teenage girl. She may have been much more petite than Rias or Akeno, but that didn't mean she didn't have assets or hips. And dear God, she had the... Okay, that's it. You're cancelled. This did cause a number of problems, as well as one problem that could become a serious issue if he let it grow. Alright. Thankfully, Naruto had experience when it came to keeping himself calm while in the presence of beautiful women. You don't become the apprentice of Jiraiya and not get desensitized to things like that happening to or around you. Naruto had 3 years of dealing with women who worked at special houses, taverns, and okay. While most people never realized that the blonde had actually grown very used to birthday suits during that time and had never been bothered when seeing it in front of him. It probably helped that he had created his female form when under henge. Oh, the sexy... I forgot what it was called. I'm such a disgrace. Anyways, when he was younger, which required a lot of knowledge about the female body. Not that his sexy jutsu. Not that he would ever tell anyone. He wasn't going to let himself get beaten over something that happened a long time ago. No way. No how. A sudden spike in energy had Naruto's head snapping over towards Issei. It was strange, but ever since Rias healed his destroyed chakra coils, his sensing abilities had been much better than before. He wondered if it had something to do with his smaller coils no longer causing his own chakra to fluctuate so wildly. Naturally, as soon as he began wondering about that, he stopped. Thinking about chakra theory gave him a headache. That was why he left the theory to Sakura. Looking at Issei, Naruto had to raise an eyebrow, raise an eyebrow when he saw the thing that had appeared on his arm. It looked like a red armored brace with yellow accents and a green jewel on top of the back of Issei's hand. His fingers were uncovered, making it look like some kind of high-tech disc shooter or something. "That's your sacred gear," Ria said with a satisfied smile. She was quite proud of her pawn's accomplishment, despite the fact that activating his sacred gear really wasn't much of one. That didn't matter when dealing with someone of Issei's stature. In moments like this, Rias would take even the most minor of accomplishments with great satisfaction. "Amazing!" Issei marveled at his bracers-covered hand. "This looks awesome." Naruto had to agree, it did look kinda cool. It would have been better if it was orange, but since it was red, he wouldn't complain too much. "A fallen angel, Yuma, thought that your sacred gear possessed a threat, which is why she toaster bathed you." "Huh? But wait." Issei looked over at Rias. "I'm still alive, so..." "Just as you were about to take your last breath, you summoned me," Rias answered before he could finish his question. Akeno gave Issei a simplified pentagram. Akeno gives Issei a simplified pentagram. She did so. On it was a circle, a pentagram. It looked very complicated with a lot of strange characters and symbols that Issei couldn't make heads or tails of. Still, it did look kind of familiar. "I told you before that a devil requires a signed contract in order to utilize a human's power." Rias lectured as Issei stared at the pentagram. Naruto also listened from where he sat, but didn't move. Or to be more accurate, he couldn't move. Konoko was still purring on his lap. "With this, humans can summon devils, after which they forge an agreement based on the fulfillment of a human's wish, taking power equivalent to the wish they grant." Even Naruto, who was actually as stupid as he sometimes acted, thought the whole thing was needlessly complicated. He got the basics of it. Devils make contract and grant human their wishes, and in return they are given power. It was sort of like how summoning creatures required something from those who summoned them. Toads required subservience to a degree, and snakes required sacrifice. In return, they would aid you in battle. So it's kind of like the missions, you know? Like the different classes of missions and stuff. Actually, it's less like that, I guess. Still, learning the more intricate details of something had never been Naruto's strong point. It didn't help that he had a very short attention span. In recent times, humans who can draw this kind of pentagram have become very rare, almost non-existent. That's why we're giving out simplified pentagrams to people with strong desires. Both Issei and Naruto looked at Rias. "Issei, you had been on the street that day where you received one of these from familiars passing them out." Issei scrunched his face. Scrunched his face up as he tried to remember that moment. It took some effort, but he eventually remembered receiving the sheet of paper from a cute girl when he was waiting for Yuma to meet him for their date. Of course, remembering that moment also made him remember Yuma stabbing him in the stomach. Needless to say, Issei could not help but feel a bit depressed. Rias continued on, either unaware or ignoring Issei's increasing depression. She placed the back of her fingers against her cheek and offered the lecherous pervert a coy look. "In your dying moments, your wish was at least to die in the arms of a beautiful girl. When I was summoned, I discovered that you had a sacred gear, so I saved your life." Movie, Grammarly, My Hero Academia, gaming, and etc. Hopefully I get good ads. Issei nodded his head to everything he was being told. It made sense to him, sort of. He didn't really get a lot of what they were telling him, but he understood the basics. He had been toaster bathed, Ria saved them, and now he was a devil. Yes, not... Oh, and if he wanted to become a harem king, he would need to grow stronger. And really, the last part was all he needed to know. Yes, not even being a devil meant anything to him as long as he could get his harem. He was perverted like that. Despite not being the kind of person who enjoyed learning new things, Naruto found himself strangely fascinated when Rias began explaining the devil hierarchy. There were apparently 4 different classes of devils: lower, middle, upper, and elite, otherwise known as the ultimate class. Devils finally gained recognition and were given the titles of either baronet, baroness, or knight/dame. After was the upper class, where devils were be given titles as, okay, this stuff is boring and it doesn't matter, so I'm just gonna skip it. You can read it on your own. It's at the bottom of chapter 3. Naruto really didn't care much for titles or for gaining nobility. He had seen what most nobles were like. The Hyuga had been a bunch of stuck-up pricks with their own heads shoved so far up there. It was a wonder that they could smell these incredibly fragrant gardens that littered their ridiculously large and expensive residence. No way in heck Naruto wanted to be like those guys. Though thinking on it, wasn't Rias part of the nobility? She was a really awesome person from what he had seen so far. He enjoyed spending time with her, and she couldn't be the only one among the nobility who wasn't a stuck-up snob, right? Well, whatever. Being a noble still didn't interest him. However, he did manage to pick up something from all this. Those who were considered ultimate class devils were supposed to be the strongest rank among their species. He supposed it was similar to an S rank ninja. Ninja, which were supposed to be ninja who had skills on par with a Kage, but weren't actual Kages, like the Sannin or members of the Akatsuki. They were recognized as the best and strongest amongst their peers. In other words, they were the ultimate, cool people. And so Naruto finally found himself with a new goal in life. He would become an ultimate class devil. No, he would become the strongest ultimate class devil. The undisputed, most powerful devil in the entire world. Yes, that was his goal. Too ambitious, you say? Remember, this is Naruto, the kid who at the tender age of 8 decided he was going to become the Hokage. Uzumaki Naruto never does anything half, it was all or nothing with this guy. So, if I become a noble, having a harem will no longer be a mere dream. And of course, there was also that guy. Naruto sighed and shook his head at Issei's words. The boy had one-track mind when it came to life. Harem this, harem that, harem king. It was wonder the boy had any thoughts in his head other than harem. Truly, this boy must be Jiraiya's reincarnation or something. That was the only logical explanation for how there could be possibly someone so perverted in this world. That's right, Rias smiled at the pair. I expect you two to work hard for me now. Work hard from now on. Yes, Rias, you've got it. Good. And for your first task, Rias showed them a flyer with a pentagram on it. You two are gonna be handing out these flyers. Huh? New part coming tomorrow. Like the video and subscribe if you're new. Thanks for watching.